I've got a cat here for luck, so I think
Nice.
things will go well.
Okay, it looks like we're live. Hello and welcome, everybody. This is our first kind of online event like this, and we'd like to welcome everybody to the Building Web3 event tonight, hosted by us, Saito Network. I'm Richard Paris. I'll be kind of emceeing and just moving everything along tonight. We're really excited tonight. We've got some great projects in the Web3 space. And what we'll be doing tonight is basically just going through a couple of presentations, a demo, and some panels, talking to people in the industry about where we're at with Web3, what people are building, challenges, what's exciting, and really kind of just the state of the industry. You didn't all tune in, I think, for a long introduction from me, so only one point to really make before we get moving. And that's for those of you who've registered and logged in via Crowdcast. Crowdcast has some nice interaction features, including the ability to ask questions and upvote questions from other viewers. So at any point, if you feel like it, click on the ask a question option at the bottom, have a look through what's there, and upvote something or add your own. And whatever time we have left at the end of each talk or panel, we'll see if we can get through a few of the viewer questions. So I think that's enough from me, and we should probably just start getting into it tonight. I'm joined by David Lancashire, my co-founder at Saito. He's going to kick things off tonight with a presentation that's been getting rave reviews in Montana and York in Canada on the topic of openness and decentralization. And I think these are some fundamental concepts in Web3 that gets to the heart of what Web3 really is, for one thing. So without further discussion, I think I'll hand over to you, David, and let you get the evening started.
Okay, we're going to have adventures with screen sharing. Hopefully this works. And let's get started. I'm really pleased to be able to give this presentation. We've been playing around with it, and one of the reasons is for us, we're going to have a lot of specific discussions tonight, and this is kind of a chance to present one of the big problems we think in the Web3 space. And it's often really hard for people to kind of to solve these problems because one thing that's happened over the past 6-7 years is we've had this real fetishization of decentralization. And we think it's a huge problem in the industry. You may have noticed The Economist is even getting into the game now, DeFi, decentralized finance. And it's gotten to the point that blockchain and crypto is associated 99.9% with decentralization, which is a technical description of, spatial distribution on a network. This isn't new. I think it is getting worse. There was a discussion on Twitter yesterday by Chris Dixon, who I think is with Andreessen Horowitz, all about decentralization. And he's wrong on this, by the way, but he's writing about how decentralization alone is going to basically get rid of Google and Amazon, which raises the question of whether they actually have decentralized networks. But it's really fundamental. And the point is that talking to people about blockchain, the word that they reach for is decentralization. And it's not just kind of in general public. If you talk to people, especially in the States, about blockchain and what Satoshi invented, you will hear 99 times out of 100 that what he invented was a consensus protocol. And it's a consensus protocol that allows distributed and decentralized networks to stay in sync. So again, the point, decentralization. If you ask for more details, you'll often be told that it was an important solution because it solved the Byzantine generals' problem. And, as a representative of the Saito project, it's a delight to be able to kind of remind people of something that we think was more commonly known back around 2013, which is that what Satoshi invented was not a decentralized network. And in fact, as some computer scientists know, the Byzantine generals problem, for instance, it was solved in 1982. The solution was tolerant to, I think, 33% of the network being bad actors. But if you think about it, the things that people who are crowing about decentralization are telling us, well, we've known how to build systems that do what they've wanted to do for almost 40 years now. So the question is, well, okay, what exactly was new about Bitcoin? What exactly is new about these crypto systems? And the answer is that, yes, Satoshi invented a solution, not the first one. But what was special about that solution was that it was open. And historically, this is what Web3 is. It's these open networks where anybody can join on equal terms. So that's not Google, that's not Amazon. And you can see that kind of technically if you look. A lot of technical people, they don't think this way. But what we had is we moved from a Lamport style system with a closed set of participants to an open system where anyone can join. And the real reason that matters is because if you have a closed system, you have to have a trusted third party or a mechanism to decide who gets to participate. And that's exactly where the attacks and the problems creep in. And one of the challenges, and I think one of the reasons people kind of don't like thinking about this, is it raises real problems for most proof-of-stake networks. Because proof-of-stake networks, in some ways, one of the things they're doing is they're accepting closure, and they're accepting that we can have a closed participant set. But that if we wrap this open selection mechanism around it, maybe it's the same sort of thing. And, maybe for Web3 it is. I think there are arguments that can be made there, but if we take a look at what people like Vitalik and Vlad Zamfir are writing, people who are, dealing with these problems, they're coming face to face with the fact that the intersection of the open and closed systems are where the vulnerabilities lie. So the first thing that Satoshi gave us was openness, and this was historically unprecedented. And the second thing he gave us was self-sufficiency, which is a network that pays for itself. And if we can go back to Chris Dixon talking about how decentralization is going to pay for Amazon and Google, it's important to remember that one reason we have a company running those networks is not because the networks are running on a single machine. I mean, their infrastructure is totally decentralized. It's because you need the company to have the business model to pay for the hardware. And, this is what Bitcoin was special about. Why is it open? Well, it can be open because it can pay for itself. So we have these two fundamental properties, and these properties are trustlessness. They're not decentralization. And I think the part of the reason that we get people who don't think this way is that because blockchain is this highly technical space, people want it to be something technical with like two servers communicating, and they have trouble with these abstract economic principles. But, if you have any doubt that this is what we want in a quote unquote decentralized system, just think of any decentralized system you think you want and remove either one of these properties, and I can guarantee you that you're not going to like what you get. Because if we remove openness, we end up with a permissioned network, which may as well be run by Google. And if we remove self-sufficiency, we end up with something that looks like the SWIFT banking system, which predated Bitcoin and is perfectly decentralized as well. So recognizing the first important thing I want to stress in the presentation is that this is what blockchain is, and this is what Web3 is. It's building scalable networks that are open and self-sufficient. And decentralization only matters as a vehicle for delivering these two properties, and it doesn't deliver it itself. And here's why. And we call this the problem of Web3. It's that originally, the reason early crypto networks were open and self-sufficient, well, they're self-sufficient because of fees, but they're open because we have volunteer provision of the peer-to-peer network. And so the problem of Web3 is if we want to put Twitter on a blockchain, if we want to put Amazon on a blockchain, we have to replace volunteer provision of network resources with a for-profit business model. And this is a problem that technical people are not aware of, which is that because the network is open, what we need to do is we need to convince a company to provide non-excludable access to data flows to competitors. That's a tough sell. And also because the network is open, we can't stop them from not doing it because we can't prevent them from spending all of their money on mining instead, for instance. So here's one of the tough things, and we're going to get to the takeaway. It's that how do we get a free market to provide a non-excludable network service? Well, economics, as it turns out, has a lot to say about this, and economics goes back way further than Leslie Lamport. We have something called public choice economics, which started in the 1960s, which basically explains why markets fail to provide these services. And we can actually see this in the history of blockchain, where repeatedly technical people have come along and they'll say, well, you look, miners are going to pay for the blockchain and they'll pay for the peer-to-peer network, or they won't get paid. Or stakers in Ethereum will provide light client support, or they won't get paid. And repeatedly, these people have just been empirically wrong, and horribly empirically wrong, to the point that in Fura last we heard, it was the vast majority of money is collected by one company. So what economics says is that the free market will actually fail to pay for the network. And this is a pill that's a bit hard to swallow, because people think about it and they'll be like, well, you know, Web3 has value. I don't want Google to own everything. I don't want Twitter to own everything. It has value for me. So somebody in the private sector will step up and start running network access nodes. And the real problem with this is that public choice economics actually tells us that, yes, the free market can find ways to pay for things, but at the cost of eliminating openness from the network. Specifically, a free market has to eliminate openness to incentivize provision. And what that means is the network layer will suffer from privatization or cartelization or monopolization. And everything that the tech people in Silicon Valley are lecturing us on about how the free market will save us, well, they're funding a problem. They're funding companies that are actually closing data flows and destroying openness. And that's a real problem with Web3, because Web3, we need openness. But what it does give us, which I think is important for the discussion tonight, is it does allow us to map the solution space, because we have a ton of really great projects here that are working at different layers of the problem. You know, some people are working layer 2, some people are working layer 1. And I think knowing the solution space is important for knowing, well, you know, what's viable and what's not. And there are 3 general classes of solutions. The first is we can have Web3 layers that rely on volunteer provision. And those can be open, but they're not going to be able to scale. So, you know, maybe this tells us that if we are doing layer 2 and layer 2 is paying for itself, we need it on a volunteer provided network. Another part of the solution space is that we can ask the free market to pay, and we can accept the fact that it's closing parts of the network. And I think a lot of proof of stake projects are in this space, where people are willing to let the free market monopolize parts of the service, because they say, well, as long as I have a smart contract, that smart contract can still provide kind of permissionless anonymity. The third space is we can fix the incentives. And I think this is where the most interesting work in Web3 is. Whether it's the work that we're doing with routing work, which is a form of work that incentivizes data routing, or people who are working on, you know, governance models with DAO, where maybe they're adding closure, but they're trying to find some way to pay for things. Obviously, we think that routing work in 3 is the solution, but we're really interested in what's happening in the space. And I hope that you found the presentation interesting with a different angle on the problem. And I hope the takeaway really for anyone is the next time someone starts talking about decentralization, ask them if they really want it at the cost of losing openness and self-sufficiency. Thank you.
Cool. Thanks, David. Really interesting presentation. It's the first time I've seen it live as such. We've got one question's popped up in the group, which I think is something we've discussed sort of, the Saitoplex quite a few times. And it's like what's Web3 going to look like, particularly from a Saito perspective, I suppose, for you, specifically, like what will the role of data centers be in Web3, and those kind of, the kind of traditional providers, how are they going to change or morph?
I mean, I think there are different models. One of the reasons we're talking about decentralization, I think, is that it's possible to get scale by trading it away. So a lot of people will close access to the validators, or they'll close a governance system, and you can use that to goose scale. Well, what does a data center look like? A data center is irrelevant if you're willing to do that. And I think the big concern is not like how do data centers pay for themselves. The big concern is, do we have these economic models forming that cannibalize the openness of consensus, right? Do we, like in Ethereum, they've got Infura, which is collecting so much money that everyone else is participating and making money with Infura's permission. Infura is becoming a trusted third party in the network because they're collecting the money and they're giving it out. And there's no reason they can't stop and say, no, we're not giving it to you, George, because you're not doing this. And that, it's throwing out blockchain and it's going back to something. I think one of the big Web3 questions, especially in the States, this is Anderson Horowitz. If they don't know that blockchains have to be open and self-sufficient, and they think it's just decentralization, like what on earth is California going to build? It's not going to be useful. It's going to be a new Google. It's going to be a new Google, maybe trying to compete with some form of like, you have to treat us like a blockchain, don't regulate us. And maybe that's fair game. But I don't think that answers the question, but I think it's maybe an explanation of why I don't think, like, what do data centers look like? If a data center, what does S3 look like? If a data center is owned by a single company and a company is paying for it, I don't think it's Web3.
Right. Cool. I've got another question, unfortunately, from someone with a name in Cyrillic, so I can't name check them. I don't read Cyrillic well enough, but it's a great question. Is Infura actually closing data flows, given that you can, run your own node and connect to the network?
MetaMask is no longer open source. MetaMask is serviced by Infura. They're essentially funded by them. And the answer is, I think that they are trying to go with premium models, which convince users to pay more. And that's one of the Ethereum solutions. Ethereum is running into these economic problems, and every single solution is basically users will pay more in fees. So it's kind of like a perpetual motion machine where if you can convince someone to give you more energy in your system, you can incentivize more. I think the real question also, though, is recognizing that Infura is losing money, just hand over fist. And they're willing to do it in part because of this Silicon Valley mentality where people are pouring money at them because they're building a moat. People use this language. They're like, oh, no, we're building a competitive moat. And it's like, look, if someone is describing building a competitive moat, they're describing barriers to entry and closure. Like that's what it looks like when the free market destroys your ideals of Web3. You can't compete because all of these companies have moats. Does that make sense? I can't see the question.
I think it does to me. I think the questions are all on the bottom of the screen. I'm not sure who can see them, but I'm happy to be reading them out for people to see me. I think we're banging up against the end of the time here, so I'll start shifting across to the next panel. So thanks a lot for the talk. And if anyone has any further questions and stuff, I'm going to repeat this throughout the night, but please hop on to our Telegram, our Discord, or follow us on Twitter. Saito is all about these conversations, and we're really keen to keep them going after this evening.
Great.
So thanks, David. I'll drop you off the screen, and I'll start bringing up the presenters for the next panel. Please bear with me, folks. This will take a second or two. So while I'm doing this, it's a great time to resettle in your chair or grab a drink, etc., etc. The next panel will be answering the question of, we're just talking directly about what's new in the field, what people are sort of seeing as trends and innovations. We have 4 speakers. Charlie Hu, I'm just inviting from Polygon in East Asia. We have Vishnu Koda, StackOS, who I think are really interesting and quite different project in the space. Vishnu will also be giving a demonstration later on in the evening. We have Luca Francesini. Luca is from SifChain. An interesting and also have, I must say, one of the most intriguing and interesting new look and feels themes of and the third speaker, he's CIO at Zeitgeist, a really interesting project working on prediction markets. So sorry, I'm just having trouble grabbing Luca. Right. While I'm doing that, begin by asking Charlie, Vishnu, and David if they can introduce themselves, their roles at their respective projects, and a little bit about what their project does. Maybe kick off with you, Charlie.
Okay, thank you. First of all, thank you, Richard, and thank you, Saito team, for having me and for this great panel. My name is Charlie, who currently based in China, has been in the crypto space since 2013, and early was kind of lucky to involved in Ethereum around 2015 when I was in Berlin. And since 2017, I've been kind of busy building ecosystem for multiple Web3 ecosystem, including Polkadot, and helped quite some Web3 infrastructure project, including Saito and several others. And currently, my role is leading the Polygon ecosystem in North Asia, mostly in China, but also cover different regions such as Vietnam, Thailand, and a little bit of Korea and Japan as well. There are a lot of interesting Web3 applications that building on the full stack solution on Polygon that but also curious to learn and just actively and discussing with many other infrastructure projects every day. And glad to share insights today as well. Thank you.
Thanks, Charlie. Vishnu, if you could do the same.
Of course. Thank you for having me here, Richard, first of all. And thank you for the community which you've gathered here. So I'm Vishnu Kode. I am the CEO and chief architect for StackOS. And for my background wise, I've been an engineer for a very long time. I like building. That's my core strength. I have patented technologies in cryogenic engines, but then also been able to have the luxury of being able to migrate really large data centers into the cloud environments. And I'm just pretty excited we're here because what we're trying to do here at StackOS is basically bringing AWS to Web3. That's what we like to position ourselves as. And Saito is one of the organizations which are running applications on StackOS as decentralized cloud. So that's us, StackOS team, and thank you for having us here again.
Cool, thanks. And David, if we could hear from you, thanks.
Yeah, thanks, Richard, as well for the invite, and really excited to be on the panel today. My name is David Perry. I'm the Chief Information Officer at Zeitgeist. Zeitgeist is a platform and ecosystem for prediction markets. So I'm a technologist, or at least I started out my life as a technologist. In 2004, I learned about the mechanism prediction markets and was really taken by it. And so I decided to start a company called Consensus Point, and provided prediction markets as a service to hundreds of organizations, many of them Fortune 500 size, and worked with a few governments, and really drove adoption of prediction markets, in a centralized context. But saw a lot of success with that. When Bitcoin came along in 2010 and 11, I started learning about that and was very, very interested in it. I didn't become professionally involved in the blockchain space, though, until Ethereum. around 2015, and ended up in 2017 working at Consensus for a few years with several startups there, working on product strategy. And then just a few years ago, got really taken by the Polkadot architecture and ecosystem. And so Zeitgeist is a ecosystem project in the Polkadot and Kusama worlds. And yeah, glad to be talking about all things Web3.
Excellent. And fortunately, I did manage to find Luca. Took me a little while. So Luca, if you could hop in with a quick introduction, that would be
you can hear me good, right?
Yeah.
Perfect. So I'm Luca Franceschini. I work as a developer relation engineer at SIFchain, which is a cross-chain DEX, basically, where we're bridging different ecosystems, and we are getting to allow margin trading on the DEX. And I kind of entered in the space around late 2016, 2017 in a small consultancy for startups, for blockchain projects. Then I got into working with Hyperloop, transportation technologies on self-sovereign identity, where they were trying to basically implement a way at the end of the day to recognize passengers and allow all this ticketing system without necessarily relying on Google and these other centralized identification systems. And then I done a bit of scientific investigation on Ethereum 2 clients at the Barcelona Supercomputing Center here in Barcelona. And and now I'm here like developer relation at SIFchain, which I have to say is been quite a nice ride so far. Like very exciting to be here also in the panel. So very nice to meet you guys, and thanks for having me on this.
Cool. So I think thanks, Luca, to get things really moving, and feel free to kind of ask each other questions and get involved as well. We don't need to kind of do a stiff pass the baton type situation, but I'd like to start off by just talking to people about what's really getting you excited in the space right now. I feel like things have been accelerating this year, and in that classic blockchain way, you know, it's kind of a trickle, then a rush, then a downpour. So, you know, what's catching people's eyes? What are we all seeing? I think maybe again go through in the same order. Charlie, what's sort of caught your eye recently?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Sorry, I was on mute.
No worries.
Yes. Yeah, thank you for the question. I think, you know, across the years, right, if we really talk about a long period of how Web3 is been evolving, or the blockchain infrastructure has been evolving throughout the years, right? I think all the panels we have been in the space since, like, at least since 2017, right? I think earlier, even 2013 or something. We really see the cyclical journey, growth journey, right? It's not like a linear journey. It's kind of a little bit turbulent somehow, right? Because of all kinds of reasons. But I think fundamentally we see two important waves. One is with all kinds of approaches, you know, technical approaches, we try to scale, you know, the blockchain infrastructure, right? I think scaling has been one of the main narrative, technically speaking, for most of the Web3 infrastructure projects, right? Either through the off-chain and kind of scaling, you know, solutions, or through the, you know, the on-chain, the layer one solutions, right, with a different type of consensus algorithm and so on. I think one important part I feel really kind of you know, after so many years working together closely with all kinds of technology projects is the way to communicate, articulate your technology solution to the adoption layer people that can get the, how to say, engagement, the real engagement, than trying to let technology projects work with each other, right? So I think I really feel, although there's a lot of downside or limitations of Ethereum, throughout the years, Ethereum has been kind of successfully get quite people's attention, actually efforts, right, to build things on top of that. We see that happened in the DeFi space. A lot of the blue chip DeFi projects has been deployed on Ethereum, right, has been growing a lot in terms of the the total capital size and also the user base, right? That's pretty phenomenal, I would say, in the last couple of years. But we do also see a mega trend of NFT or some other adoption applications happening in different types of other infrastructures, right? And like we see some other kind of a new high performance blockchains has been kind of successfully letting all kinds of adoption projects building on top of them, right? Including Polygon, Polkadot, Solana, and upcoming we will see Saito maybe as well. So I think one interesting part of I feel I'm also kind of curious to learn is the multi-chain and multi-layer kind of coordination, right? We see a lot of the bridges coming across and kind of appearing, but we also see a lot of security issues, right? Like we have several serious attacks happened. Actually, a lot happened, right, throughout this year already. A lot happened in BSC. Some happened like previously with O3, Poly Network, and some others, due to all kinds of reasons, right? But the demand to able to moving assets from one chain to another is actually a very big necessity in the space, right? So the kind of dilemma or the challenge to get the token asset composability cross-chain features across versus the security is actually a big challenge. I see that happened and actually remains to be solved, to be honest, before we really can unlock the mega trend of all the compliant, all kinds of traditional institutional level fintech, money coming into the Web3, right? So I think without that, I don't really see the growth potential. And we will always be more like a closed loop elite group of crypto people working all kinds of small DeFi and or NFT solutions without actually able to unlocking the cross-chain asset composability type of real Web3, right? So that's kind of what I've been seeing throughout the years, and also the challenge. I'm very curious and looking forward to see all kinds of new solution to solve this problem.
Cool. Thanks, Charlie. Vishnu, what's something that's catching your eye, like getting your attention in the space at the moment?
Yeah. But Charlie, I think, has covered so much. Probably left very little for us to speak
Damn you, Charlie.
about. But I know. But in honesty, I guess this is the time for us, right? Like Charlie, I think initially mentioned this, that people are here from a long time, and they have been. It's not been a linear progression. It's been like a lot of troughs and tops and everything. Not just from the price point of view, but from emotional point of view, from people really willing to develop and run applications, on the decentralized network. So it's been amazing, I guess, how far we have come by. And I think as we are going towards the further part, coming to this day, I think there is a gradual shift in not just destroying the banks, but that has progressed into destroying pretty much all the large companies, enterprises, who have been holding the data as their own, to something which is more decentralized. And I think this is the time for us as the community members trying to pull the strings away from all these big behemoths, and then owning and really saying that how big we can really be, and how successful can decentralized open networks can be. In similar lines, I think what's really exciting me, I think, coming forward is like StackOS. I think we are positioned very, very well to really be Amazon Web Services for Web3, right? I think that is something that is extremely unique, and I think it is one of the largest markets in the world right now. So I think it's just this, I guess, fundamentally to not just the smart contracts running on these layers or protocols, but also the infrastructure on which your applications run right now, how they can be decentralized in many ways. From the few examples, and I think one of you guys has brought that up as well. If you look at Uniswap, right? I mean, the protocol Ethereum does allow for all the security tokens to be listed and to function, right? But then everyone uses Uniswap, and guess what? Because they were compelled by organization running the website or the service for Uniswap, they had to delist almost all the security tokens, right? So that shows you the strength of decentralized network, not just from not just from the network's point of view, but also from the infrastructure of the cloud, right? How if you could decentralize that, how can you actually completely get away from the governments and from the limitations which everyone around you tries to encompass you under. So I think that's a huge positioning wise, like why StackOS is trying to be the Amazon Web Services for Web3. Extending that, right? I think in ways how you can run like NFTs, for example, right? So it's really challenging, I guess, right? Because right now all of us have been viewing NFT just from a myopic view of basically sending some GIFs around the marketplace. But there's so much more value to NFTs, and I think as we go forward, we'll be seeing much more diversification of utilization of NFTs as a concept, and probably and maybe in further conversations, if we do talk about that, I'll be talking about something which StackOS is really excited about.
Cool. Thanks, Vishnu. I must say, I remember just trialing StackOS. I had that you're remembering something I always knew feeling of, this is what it's all about when you're paying for a service, an online service, but not touching the ground, just staying completely in the crypto space. I think that
exactly.
It was a nice little reminder of that for me recently. Cool.
Yeah.
David, what's got you excited?
You don't. Sorry, I was just saying that you just don't need a bank account and link your Amazon Web Services account to it. You can be completely in crypto and deploy and run applications, which gives the user interface to people.
Yeah, no, it's a big part of things. Thanks for that. Yeah. All right, sorry, David, what's got your eye at the moment?
So I mean, scaling is certainly a relief. Really gratified to see what's been happening over the last few years. I'd say another big area for me, and throwing it out to the group, is just governance. I'm a governance nerd. That was what got me into prediction markets way back when, and I think we're now seeing, with some of these networks that have been developed here recently, and particularly with NFTs, DAOs forming, kind of on the fly, and I think at some point, I think collectively, folks realizing that you can, DAOs are a lot more. You can do a lot more with DAOs than just manage and own NFTs, and we're seeing that. So governance, just in general. And also futarchy, which is a mechanism that pioneered by Robin Hanson, the sort of forefather of prediction markets. We're using markets to help make governance decisions, and like to David's point earlier, markets can't solve all problems by any means, but what they can do is provide a very efficient mechanism of collecting and organizing information so that you can improve your decision making. There's no doubt about that, and it's the most effective mechanism that we know of that can do that. So I'd say governance for sure, and I always love talking about that space. In a larger sense, I'll just say briefly, I love seeing more consent and agreement in the world. These systems are really empowering and enable people to have more agency and autonomy, and it's great to see the number of developer friends that I have that have gotten into the space and done well, and that stream is continuing to grow, and it's also the entrepreneur folks that are coming in, and now we have the infrastructure and the can scale, and the building blocks necessary to build and operate a business well. So I'm really excited about those things.
Cool, thanks, and thanks for your patience, Luca. If you could, hop in with your thought.
Very interesting perspective. So always nice to listen. Actually, I'm gonna reconnect a bit to what has already been said, and for me in general, the most incredible thing about Web3 is that it actually, for the first time in human history, is allowed to exchange value without relying on intermediaries, regardless of the project, regardless of the protocol you're using, regardless of the community you are building, right? And it's all this kind of all different ecosystems that find their own way to kind of integrate between each other, and to integrate also with the technology that we are already using now as users now on the Web 2. and this is truly amazing, right? Because it really enhances creativity, right? It creates new, not only new business models, but new societies potentially, just because people find the new ways to collaborate through, for example, DAOs and governance and prediction market, and joining to other protocols that maybe are, these other protocols have been founded with other paradigm, no? Maybe about scalability or whatever. But the cool thing is that at the end of the day, what really matters in Web3 is that, yeah, you can go to a website and connect a bunch of different wallets that you have from really different ecosystems and interact with them wherever you are, just because you have a laptop. And this for me is incredible, because then whatever you see, like fungible tokens, non-fungible tokens, governance token, at the end of the day, is literally a new economy that is just nourishing and is amazing, because nobody has the right solution on its end. No, it's like that's why it's so cool to stay in this industry, because as there is so much work to do, like there is nobody who can have potentially the clear picture on every aspect of it. And this is the cool thing about collaborating with different projects that have different perspectives, no? And just to close, like for me, this is also the reason why I'm very excited about SwiftChain, because at the end of the day, like you can go in the SwiftChain DEX and connect your MetaMask, your Kepler wallet. You're already connected within all the Ethereum ecosystem, the Cosmos ecosystem. Then we're going to integrate all the Ethereum virtual machines, based system like Polygon, Binance Smart Chain, and then we're going to put margin trading. And then it's not only this, right? Because also once you have all this kind of ecosystem, then like it doesn't make sense not to manage it through a DAO, right? And then the question is, okay, but which DAO should it be? Like, should it be a DAO of DAOs, or how can the DAO of this ecosystem connect with other DAOs through all the integrations and that there are possible, no? And then it's really like it's like I don't know, like sky's the limit. So yeah, this is at least for me what excites me most about Web3.
Cool, thanks. So we've got few questions up, but I think something that has been touched on by most of the speakers, and it is one of the hot topics, is NFTs. And you know, it only occurred to me the other day that actually, and I looked this up, tried to do some calculations, but I think the most valuable NFT set by a huge amount right now is Uniswap V3 liquidity NFTs. So I don't think that's, you know, what anyone much out there imagines when they hear NFT, aside from people who are thinking like me, maybe. So I think maybe let's kick in with David on this one, because you mentioned, you know, you're a governance wonk. You're really into these concepts around kind of NFTs and tokenizing things other than, say, necessarily, you know, straight up value your shares in something or money. So where do you think NFTs go as part of Web3? What are some of the interesting ways they get used?
Sure. Well, I mean, just to start out, it's going to be continuation of the derivatization boom, you know, and I think that's, you know, for better or worse, there's some pitfalls, but I think, you know, largely that's a positive thing. And also from, at least in terms of NFTs, you know, from static to dynamic, where we're seeing, you know, maybe the point about owning the NFT is less about I mean, yes, you have a piece of art or an asset that's tradable, but there's also the connection to the source of that NFT, and it's generative. So as you participate in the community, develop a reputation there, then that NFT now starts to exhibit those attributes of your reputation, and I think that's very powerful. And I think, you know, as far as beyond NFTs, I think things like invoice factoring, maybe, you know, it's kind of a nerdy thing, but I think that's something that in terms of supply chains is huge. I mean, it's already huge, but I think just in terms of tokenizing the supply chain I'm really pleased to see that happening. It's going to continue clearly and will accelerate. Well, I'll leave it there. I mean, there's as far as the governance, certainly around these assets is a huge area, but I'll leave it there for now.
Cool. Maybe Charlie, you want to hop in on this topic as well, and I'll try and get Luca back. I'm not sure where he is.
Yeah. So I think NFT has been a very frequent to discuss topic since, I don't know, maybe since last December, when everybody kind of started realizing the adoption layer on the art side, and NFT as a collectible, and then expanding more than that, right? I agree with you. Uniswap V3 is actually the highest volume that a lot of people didn't really look at it. The kind of the by default assumption people think about NFT is, okay, it's just another art thing, right? It's a digital art. It's a replicate of all kinds of physical representation or digital representation of a physical pieces, right? Either could be art, it could be many other stuff. We on the Polygon side, we see a lot of the new NFT projects kind of really building up. That we call this more like NFT 2.0, with a much more interesting innovation on the composability, flexibility. I was actually just talking about that kind of topic 3 hours ago with another panel. We were talking a lot about NFT on gaming, NFT on financial tickets, on all kinds of, we call this financial NFT or many others. Essentially, the Uniswap V3, like this positioning, right, on the liquidity trading, that's part of unique asset, right? So non-fungible token is not necessarily equals to digital collectible, right? But that's kind of really the first layer of adoption. People think about that, oh, art, right? It's a kind of a very nature kind of logic, right? But it's much more than that, right? We see interesting game weapons, in all kinds of GameFi projects that can put into NFT, right? We see that happen in loot, all kinds of very interesting, in NFT innovation, right? We see that happen in all kinds of, kind of a mass entertainment industry across music, movie, sports, or many others, right? That can be interesting way to engage with the fan base. David mentioned about the governance. I think governance plays a very big role, in all kinds of NFT and DeFi projects, which we need to talk about this more and explore that kind of innovation. On Polygon, we see a lot of NFT protocols, more like a middleware, that's right, trying to solve this problem, such as the lack of liquidity for NFT assets, through fractionalization, cross-chain. We're building some kind of cross-chain bridges across all the other EVM compatible chains. I think that's kind of important that, some of the NFTs are mint on Ethereum, but built to the gas fee and all the other limitation, they want to actually, cross, through some cross-chain bridge, migrate to Polygon, BSC, or maybe other, high performance chains for, the trading and the transactions and so on. We already have 40% of the OpenSea NFT minting and the transaction volume actually goes to the Polygon version of OpenSea. That's actually a very high volume. A lot of people don't realize it. Like we just keep seeing a lot of new innovation on the NFT space, which is much more than just art collectible, just CryptoPunk, JPEG stuff. I personally am not a big fan of JPEG, but a huge fan of loot or all kinds of, more like a type of NFT use cases, right? That can be you can use the NFT.
You just like gaming.
I'm a bigger gaming fan, but I think it's mass entertainment side, right? I think rather than just holding as my profile picture, right? I think the NFT can do much more than that. So that's kind of what I've been seeing, and it's kind of what I feel passionate about more than just JPEG. Yeah.
Cool. Maybe we'll head over to you, Luca, for your thoughts on where NFTs are headed, and maybe from your cross-chain perspective, what that means.
Yeah. Let's see. This is an item that has always been talked about a bit. Like why don't we integrate with NFTs? Like we are already cross-chain DEX, and the thing is, it's a whole new world completely, because as everybody said already, like possibilities are endless. It's like at the end of the day, I think we are extremely extremely far from understanding all the potential that NFTs can cover, and just we are now seeing the tip of the iceberg. Because at the end of the day, like NFTs, it's I'm not saying it's everything, but everything that can be authenticated and can be distinguished from other items. So when it comes to logistics or products or stuff like this, or royalties, like everything potentially, the way it's integrated, of course, could be potentially be an NFT. And I think the cool thing about NFTs that it's interesting is that they really depends on the social contract of the community they rely on, because at the end of the day, like it's not a complete on-chain token, right? Its value depends somehow. Like you have the identity, the ownership that is proven by the blockchain, but the thing itself sometimes it's literally off-chain, right? And so the thing is, how can you create an incredible community around it that kind of value the social contract between, let's say, the NFT creators and the community and the market that is over there, and how to actually integrate all this community with a system of organizing the community and stuff like this. So, and at the end of the day, I think it's like at the beginning I was a bit like, sometimes it feels it's too much, no, NFTs. But at the end of the day, if you think about it, like in when we always been, I don't know, sharing things on social media, at the end of the day, why shouldn't in 10 years from now, like a ticket for a concert I go not be an NFT? And we usually think of NFT always with a market value, which is it can be the case, of course, but like I think also kind of as a way for people to kind of identify themselves on Web3, then I think it's going to be huge. Then with all the privacy concerns that come from this, right? And that's a whole new world, but I think we are far from that. So I would say for now, still, when it comes to SwiftChain, we're really focusing on integrating the EVMs and just getting into cross-chain bridging and have enough liquidity in pools and kind of integrate easily from different ecosystems, which I have to say it's and then margin trading, and then it would be amazing to talk also about NFTs, because it's also there, like it's a lot of things to do.
I just wanted to echo something that Lucas said. I happen to be in Nashville, Tennessee, which is Music City, USA, and there are a lot of music artists that are interested and actively working on NFTs as tickets. So I think we will see, in a lot sooner than 10 years, some activity there, as well as in the crypto networks. I know several projects that are using NFTs for ticketing. So ticketing is quite a compelling use case, I'd say.
Yeah, I think definitely. Yeah. I think also for things like airline tickets, etc., where you can, refund by reselling your seat, etc., is a sort of really interesting future as well. You sort of get rid of scalping and just have open markets. Cool. Vishnu, are you going to tell me that my container instances on StackOS are also NFTs?
All right, you just hit it right there, right? So just building on like what Charlie, David, and of course Richard, now you talked about, right? I think there's going to be more utility to the NFTs from just GIFs and images. So pretty much like what Richard just said. Right now we're in this world, right? How do we bring all those things which are in the centralized worlds to the decentralized networks, right? Like for example, running applications, there will be developers. It is going to be a lot of enterprises coming to the blockchain, and they would want to build products which can be sold and utilized by these decentralized communities. So many of your applications, you'd start identifying them as containers, right? Or or even your deployments, right, which actually run on this decentralized cloud, would be NFTs by themselves. And it's not just just an app just being moved from one owner to another, but also look at this from the extent of that, how do you license tokens or license products or services, much like let's say your Windows operating system, and you have a license which they sell to other entities. You could basically get developers onto the blockchain and say, hey, please develop on this, and then you can use NFTs to license your product and sell them to the customers and use them for their life of the tool. So I think that's a very, very incredibly position up there. And StackOS is kind of a leader in that thought process. And how do you really bring those NFT concepts into application deployments and trying to establish ourselves as for the pioneers there in that industry. But again, I think just extending, I think, Richard, from containers and ownerships, right? So you would see that, then for instance, that Uniswap is the current owner or the one who's trying to manage the entire application which is running, right? So StackOS is also working on how do you decentralize that ownership of the front-end website? It's not just Uniswap owning it, it's the community which can own their entire deployments for that and cause it to upgrade as the community decides to upgrade it. So I think that very, very powerful in terms of how do you get not just the smart contracts to work and have infinite number of user interfaces interfacing with the smart contract. You will see a convergence of ownership of the uniswap.com or .org as an entity which is shareable, and in a very decentralized way, decisions can be made by people across the world in terms of what the direction of the software should be, and not be controlled by few fixed people who have vested interest in the product success. So I think that's one of the frontiers of which Stack was trying to push the boundaries for. And I think we have some significant success, and we have built some really good partnerships within this ecosystem, like Panther Protocol, trying to really get this thing in such a way that you can even have the data and NFTs not just like on public IPFS storage, but also be able to store the data for your NFT very privately within the network. So I think we are building up not just ourselves, but taking help from the community across projects in the space to build a very solid product which is going to really revolutionize we operate in the Web3 world.
Yeah, I think there's really a lot of space there for things like certifications and stuff as well, whether that's permission, I'm part of the group that is allowed to do this, or I have gained a skill or an authorization from someone else to do this. And that stuff's really cool, right. Really exciting for me as well. Cool. I think we've probably got time for one more question. So looking at the ones I had in there, I think maybe something to change tack just a little bit is, I mean, we all declared at the start of this, we've all been Web3 since, since we discovered it, really. And that's multiple years for all of us. But what's bringing people into space? I mean, there's obviously growth. There are people coming in and discovering the space. So what's causing people to, discover Web3 and get excited about it as a movement or a set of ideas? Maybe go off in the original order and start with you, Charlie.
Okay, thank you, Richard. I think what excites a lot of people is the growth in new territory or new types of communities. I think that at least excites me a lot. We see from Bitcoin, we engage with a lot of the cryptology people, right? Computer scientists people, or let's say the people who are very egalitarian mindset, right? Then we saw smart contract come out, right? We got a lot of real informatics or electronic engineer, computer scientists, or basically even finance people, right? Who realize, okay, there's a lot of financial way to do around with a smart contract with Ethereum network, right? And then we see all kinds of artists, gaming people, musicians, right? Movies people, like all the other people we just mentioned about NFT, other adoptions, right? People with completely different backgrounds. Some of them completely non-technical backgrounds, like creative people, right? When we talk now, like this year, a lot of people talking about metaverse, right? All the future of that has nothing to do with technology, to be honest. Though they don't have engineering backgrounds, they now talk about all the hardcore infrastructure layer of consensus algorithm, right? Talk about all the the cryptology and language and all that, right? They care about the future of Web3 for specific applications, right? So we see different types of people with different mindset, backgrounds, experiences, and resources coming into the space. I feel that's really a very big signal of growth, a real growth, not just like a kind of like an inner circle group of people, always the same people talk about same topic over and over again, right? I would say, of course, there's still a lot of technology problems remains to be solved that require all kinds of inner circle cryptology people or hardcore blockchain innovators to really work on, right, across the years. But I think the growth has been really expanding the network, expanding the circles, and also in different geographic locations, right? I think if we look at data, a lot of new countries actually are being very active in talk about crypto and using blockchain for all kinds of applications, including DeFi and NFT. I'm talking about Turkey, I'm talking about Latin American, we're talking about Middle East, we're talking about South Asia, we're talking about Africa, actually. A lot of African new projects actually built on Polygon, built on Ethereum and all the others. We find out data from all kinds of tracking tools. So that thing for me feels like it's really a globalized community now. We're not just focusing on a very small inner circle elite group. And actually, with very diverse, community contributors in the space already. So I'm kind of leading the advocates program for several Web3 communities. We see a lot of advocates or ambassadors have various type of backgrounds, but they all have the common vision or the passion to kind of contribute more to this future of Web3, right? So that excites me more, like to talk to these people now with a very similar type of mindset, background, but a very diverse and and people from all over the world.
Cool. Vishnu, what I'm going to try and pin it down a bit, partially for time, but also to try and get some different perspectives from people. So are you seeing people coming to StackOS who are looking for a cloud provider generically and then get excited about working through what you're providing?
So, we do see a lot of people coming in and deploying on StackOS. And I mean, just a month and a half, when we actually logged in on mainnet, and we have already seen like few hundreds now applications running on StackOS. And so those were projects reaching out to us. And I think, but a lot of the people who are coming to StackOS is, and let's be honest, right? It's across the space and across the crypto world. People are coming in for money, right? I think that's what they come in for. And they are so passionate and they love it, what they're seeing, and they stick to it. I think that's kind of thing which has happened with StackOS as well. A lot of the community members originally were like, okay, you know what, it's a quick buck thing. They come in and now they're seeing when applications are really deploying, real projects doing real things, and they're really loving it. And we are getting a lot of the organizations, startups, launch pads coming to us and saying, hey, you know what, you are really pushing the canvas for decentralization from the infrastructure point of view, and also making it so simple for organizations to really start using cloud service, which again is extremely hard with AWS or GCP. Simplifying that process and also be able to add so much value of decentralization and keeping everything crypto native. That they are like, hey, offer people to you as organizations who are going to be, using this cloud service. Some of the cool things. I mean, we are pretty much going to partner with two of the largest, organizations we know here in the crypto space very, very soon, and pretty excited about that. So it's like it's not just applications coming in who want to deploy, but even the largest of the organizations who are building a lot of applications on themselves, really wanting to push the canvas forward and saying, hey, you know what, use StackOS to deploy your applications in a secure, fast, efficient manner, and really be able to expand the horizons of decentralization. So I think that's what I would put as people, how they're coming in and sticking and expanding in the StackOS space.
Cool. David, with relation to, you mentioned you'd worked in the prediction market space outside of and prior to crypto, I think, if I remember correctly. What in that area is bringing people into the Web3 version of that? What's appealing, and where are you seeing kind of growth or interest?
Sure. Yeah. Definitely. So the interest is because they can they see that these technologies, crypto, solves their problem, and they're coming in with specific applications and use cases. Around resource allocation, forecasting, improving decision making, and so since we've been building for a while, we now have as a community, as just the crypto space in general, we're to a point now we can actually solve some business problems. And it feels really good that you don't have to be kind of a crypto native to be able to generate value on a crypto network. You can come in as a non-techie, and so we're seeing a really nice inflow of people into our ambassador program called the SEER program, as well as we just launched a SEER program in China, by the way. But that's the main way people are coming in, is they're finding out the project via our ambassador program, and then working together, because we're very tech oriented, and we can help them figure out what their problem is and how to solve it. A lot of those conversations happen in those community discussions.
Cool, thanks for that. And Luca, from your side, what's driving people's interest in Web3? I mean, cross-chain seems initially to me to be something that's primarily interested in people who've got assets on more than one chain, which isn't necessarily new people. But what are you experiencing and seeing out there?
So I would say, like, the world we are going towards, unfortunately, is going to be way more controlled than it is right now. And I refer this like saying, let's take for example, like the Binance, what happened with Binance, what sometimes happened with Coinbase, and like we are, the more the money flows into Web3, the more regulators will try to or regulate it or stop it, depending on the gravity of the situation, right? Let's imagine that from next year, most of the countries implement negative interest rates, and you're basically charged if you put money in the bank. In addition to that, there is inflation, right? Like, why should you keep your money in the bank, pay negative interest rate, be in charge of inflation, and you have this money run by a mega node with infinite supply, trillion. Compared to, right now we are in the connection between different protocols, and you can swap and jump between different ecosystems, just with your browser. It's literally just you have an extension, you plug it in, like is your wallet. Money is yours, and you literally can interact with everything, right? It's not once you allow cross-chain swaps between several ecosystems, like for example all the EVM compatible chains like Ethereum, Polygon, Binance Smart Chain, then all the Cosmos ecosystem, right? It's a community that is growing more and more, and like once you do this, like basically you literally have the web for you, right? And it doesn't matter Binance because or Coinbase or a centralized exchange, because it means that once you are in crypto, nobody can stop you, right? Because maybe let's say like this. Let's say with SIFCHE, we don't investigate a lot on zero knowledge. No problem at all. Like you want some privacy, jump with inter-blockchain communication. From SIFCHE, you jump to a zero knowledge proof. You jump to Mina, let's say I invent, and then you come back. You go to another protocol where you want to host your cloud provider. No, you go to StackOS, and then you want to go into. Then you make a bit more privacy, and you go into governance token. It's and nothing can stop you. This is the cool thing, right? So, closing and answering to your question, I would say that for me, it's a bit the curiosity, the interest of the possibilities that this cross-chain swaps and financial operation can bring, and all this interconnection between different DAOs of different ecosystems that can get into, let's say, a single point of liquidity, not because it needs to be there, but it's simply because it can be literally a connector between a lot of different liquidity in different ecosystems. So I would say this, and mostly will be accelerated by the need, right, of people to actually need to do this, because they cannot use Binance anymore for their legislation or whatever reason.
Yeah.
Cool.
I mean, just trying to add to what Lucas was saying, right? It's funny. Well, when he's talking cross-chain, right? I keep telling this to my peers and a lot of our team members and community members in general. Crypto is a one-way street. Once you're in crypto, you are in crypto, right? And if you have to move within crypto, the chain is there.
Yeah, it's really cool too. Yeah. That's a good.
definitely it's impossible to like think your way out of, like to forget. You wouldn't be like so leave it behind. Thanks so much, everyone, for being on the panel. It's some great perspectives. We left some questions at the table, so hopefully we'll get to discuss them together at some point. So I'll drop you guys all off. Actually, David, if you were interested, the next panel has a spot free. It's on the Polkadot ecosystem. If you're interested in
Sure.
sticking around.
Yeah, I'll hang out.
Cool. So thanks everyone else for your time today, and we'll hear from a couple of you later on other things as well.
Thanks a lot for having us, Richard. It was a pleasure.
Cool, thanks.
See you guys.
All right, just a second for me to bring up the folk for the next session. I need to search them in the interface. Unfortunately, I can't kind of pre-allocate this. So there's Songming Shi from Crust. From Fala, and last but not least, Francisco from Francisco is invited.
Hi, Richard.
Hey, Marvin, it's been a while.
Yeah.
Cool.
Nice to see you.
Good, nice to see you. So maybe with David, we had David on the last panel, but maybe starting with you, Marvin, if you can introduce yourself, your role, and the project you're with, what you're doing.
Cool. Thank you, Richard, for the invitation. And hi, David there. It's a pleasure to meet you. And also, yeah, hi, Michi and Francisco. Hi. Hi, everyone. Yeah. Hi, everyone. This is Marvin too. I'm the co-founder of Fala Network, and I'm also the CEO of Hash Forest, which is a Singapore-based company, charging in major development of Fala Network. And before I joined the founded Fala Network, I worked for traditional internet companies in China like Tencent and Didi for a long time. And that's the period where I realized I'm more attracted into the new world, not the old world. And I think the crypto world is a more rule-fairs, world for the future. So that's the reason why I joined the industry. And after that, me and my co-founder Hang In, we found out that we think the crypto space definitely need privacy and more powerful Web3. I heard you guys talking about the cloud issues in the last session, which is true, and we want to solve that problem. That's the idea of Fala. So so that's all I'm here about. Thank you.
Cool. Thanks for that. Francisco, if you can introduce yourself, project, and what your role is there.
Yeah, sure. I mean, nice to meet everyone here. Thanks for having me. It's a pleasure and an honor. So I'm Francisco Agosti. I help out with ecosystem development and markets related work for the Moonbeam network. I actually form part of the Pure Stake team, which is the development company behind Moonbeam. But yeah, basically what we're building at Moonbeam is kind of it's an Ethereum implementation on Polkadot to kind of facilitate the on-ramping process on the Polkadot ecosystem. So we just kind of try to leverage the power that the EVM has and the traction that it's gotten in its tech stack. And it's quite simple and practical for projects to just leverage the existing code base they have on Ethereum or other EVM compatible chains and port that onto Moonbeam, thereby kind of getting access to this greater Polkadot ecosystem that offers a lot of benefits that we'll probably get into in this chat, but that's kind of the gist of it.
Cool, thanks for that. And so, Ming-Shi, if you could do the same, just a quick introduction and a little bit about Crust and what you do there.
Great, thanks, Richard. Hello, guys. I am Ming-Shi, and I am the community dev from the Cross community, not a core team, so don't give me tricky question. Oh, just a joke. Please ask freely. Yeah, I am still an undergraduate studying computer science, and I'm having my gap year between my sophomore year and my junior year. During my time at Berkeley, I started to learn about Ethereum and Cosmos, and I entered the Web3 community since then. It is really glad to join the Cross community, and I'm currently responsible for the ecosystem development for the Cross community in the US. So really glad to join the event, and maybe I should give some brief introduction about Cross Network. Cross Network is a decentralized storage network of Web 3.0. Cross Network provides a blockchain-based incentive layer for IPFS, as well as a decentralized computing layer. Cross Network is aiming to build a decentralized cloud ecosystem that supports multiple scenarios, including serverless website hosting, off-chain data storage, and content delivery. Yeah, that's basically I've got to see.
Cool.
Wow.
Thanks for that.
Yeah, I don't know you went to a Christ issue. Congrats.
Cool. It's always a small world, I think, because you mentioned Berkeley. I mean, we've been to a couple of Berkeley blockchain at Berkeley events, and they helped Saito out a little bit in the early days. So it's kind of nice to have those loops going around. Kind of getting into it initially. I mean, Polkadot, I think, is really impressive, and to me, it's one of the genuinely strong takes on ETH2. You know, it's obviously an Ethereum founder. With its own, kind of very thoroughly thought out and, quite an intricate structure, really. Big news in the space recently has been the Kusama parachain slot auctions. So I was wondering if I could get a little bit of feedback from the room for anyone who's been involved about what that's looked like from the perspective of projects in the space. For anything just from providing some, kind of light into your projects through to, how it's actually changed the everyday running of what you're doing, etc. So I know some of the projects you have participated, but I'm not quite sure on all of your status. So maybe because I know, Moonbeam and Cross have been very active, we'll start maybe with you, Francisco, if you could just talk a little bit about the parachain slot auctions, where we are and what that means for you guys.
Yeah, sure. Glad to jump in here. So yeah, I mean, I think the Kusama parachain auctions were quite significant for the Polkadot ecosystem in general. I think it's a moment that many people around the space were waiting for, and it just kind of the first stage where it became real. So recently, I think the second round for the Kusama parachain auctions, or maybe they're still ongoing. I haven't followed the second round too much, but I think it's been significant, right, for the ecosystem and for Moonbeam itself. I think the biggest result that came out of it is just like a ton of learning, right? I think Kusama, we learned firsthand kind of the value and the purpose of what Kusama is supposed to represent, which is kind of just this experimental canary network where teams can just learn under real economic conditions what it means to deploy in kind of a Polkadot-like environment. So for the Moonbeam team, I mean, we've just learned a ton. We deployed Moonriver around a month ago. And since then, I mean, we've had like 5 client releases, 4 runtime upgrades. We were like north of 1 million transactions so far. So a lot of activity, over 1,000 ERC20 tokens have been minted, over 200 mil in TVL. And there's like over 100,000 transactions per day. So there was no way for us to like prepare for this moment. We had been running kind of a test net where we were running kind of a full Polkadot environment, including a relay chain, a parachain. But I think nothing could have prepared us for this moment, since we just saw kind of so much load and demand upon launch. And we were kind of expecting to launch in this like step-by-step process, super organized and structured. But I think we found pretty quickly that like the community was so excited about this moment that there were just dozens of projects deploying as soon as we enabled the EVM, which was great to see. And I mean, it's kind of helped us stress test the whole mechanism of parachains and the relationship between parachains and the relay chain and how that works. So I know our team and Parity are working on kind of optimizing all this process. So yeah, I mean, very good experience so far. I think it was also significant for the space in general because people like just had their eyes on Kusama, right? Especially in anticipation of the Polkadot auctions. And the response has been positive so far. So I think the future bodes well for Polkadot in general. So yeah, I think we'll continue to learn in the months to come.
Cool, thanks. And Mingxue, what's your thoughts on the slot auctions and where that's taking things?
Yeah, to be honest, the biggest result that I have seen from the Polkadot parachain auction, probably it's about the ecosystem growth. Currently, we have talking about question interoperability a lot in China, but actually what I have seen so far is mostly about the ecosystem growth, as we know, because Polkadot's relay chain itself does not support smart contracts. So for developers, they have, if they want to enter the Polkadot and Kusama ecosystem, they have to use substrates to build their own blockchain to win the auction or become a para thread. It takes really a lot of money to win the auction, and it takes a lot of time to develop their own blockchain. So previously, we've got a lot of projects in the Polkadot and Kusama ecosystem, but actually none of them is actually connected to the Polkadot or Kusama relay chain. But with the recent Kusama releases of these parachains, now developers are able to use smart contracts to build inside the Polkadot ecosystem with the help of the parachains like Fala, like Moonbeam, like R-Star Network. Yeah, that's what I've seen so far.
Cool, thanks for that. Marvin, do you have thoughts on what's come to pass with the first of the parachain auctions? What we're seeing happening in the ecosystem?
Yeah, if you guys have read Harry Potter, then I don't know if you remember there's a magazine called Quibbler, right? So I'm going to be the guy who say something like more negative. First, all parachain slot auctions are quite tight, fighting with each other from the first slot to the 10th to the 9th at the moment. And it means two things. First, the tokenomic for Polkadot and Kusama works, right? The major tokenomic is that the parachains need to stake, contribute dollar tokens and to get the slot, and the community can do prolong for the contributions, and it did work. Although in the meanwhile, the staking ratio for Kusama reduced a little bit, like 10%, and based on our analytics, like at least one slot will take 1% of the total token of the relay chain. So it means that the same situation could happen on Polkadot auction as well. The second thing we learned is that from the auction is that actually it is very helpful for the blockchains who never initiate token. But for the ones who already initiate a token, or we say the token have a price, then it's not so friendly because the APY is secured and the budget is limited, and the contributors have less expecting for the return. So yeah, so it gives us some experience for the next coming Polkadot auction. But the thing, this is for the slot auction experience. And on the other hand, after all of the parachains got their slots and began to launch, we found that I think the liquidity really matters. So that's something we should learn from. All of the parachains should learn from Moon River, that they did a very good job. So, for example, the state mint haven't launched USDT or any stable coin yet. It's launched a bunch of Polkadot native tokens, and most of them haven't got very good liquidity from the market. And for example, Karura launched the Swipe, the Bootstrap, but all liquidity are squeezing from if you stake KSF. So it means that the TVL will be limited, and the liquidity between different sites and different layers are not so good. So we definitely need a bridge, more layers like Ethereum, Arbitrum, Polygon, BSC into Polkadot to get the liquidity. Second, and another thing I have to say is that the XCM doesn't work. The standard is not so good to go yet, but it is getting better. Some parachains are using V0 version of the XM, but some are using are planning on V1. Maybe Moon River and Kala are planning on this. But yeah, so I believe that in the near future, the parachains communication will launch, but not yet after 2 months from the first slot auction successful launch. So the whole process a little bit delayed for the whole ecosystem, but it's okay. It's promising, and everybody is working really hard. And yeah, I think that's all we learned from the current situation.
Cool, thank you. And David, I'm not sure with Zeitgeist if you guys are looking at a parachain slot, but yeah, what's your take on the Kusama auctions and where we're going from here?
Well, it's like others have said, it's certainly generating a lot of interest and excitement. Zeitgeist is going for a slot. We have not started talking about that much, but we're looking at, we're in the, as Francesca said, the second round. I think we've got 2 more to go, so slot 9 and 10. And so Zeitgeist is in the process of releasing a beta version of its system that will be happening in the coming weeks. And along with that, coinciding with when we expect the 3rd round of auctions to happen, Zeitgeist is planning to be going for its parachain lease offering. So definitely excited about what's happening and in the ecosystem as well as on Zeitgeist, and yeah, more info forthcoming.
That sounds exciting. Thanks for that. Something that's come up, I mean, Francesco mentioned this in terms of just like being hit with load and I mean, these are success problems, but really having to sort of take into account all of the impact of actually going live on a popular network. And then Marvin, you mentioned, yeah, there have been some delays, and I think the delays or perceived delays in the Polkadot rollout roadmap get press, but what's it actually meaning for projects in the ecosystem? Is this something everyone's on board with, or is it in any way controversial? Or maybe just go through in the same order. So Francisco, what's your thoughts on these things?
Well, sorry.
Yeah, no worries. I mean, if you want to go first? Or?
No. Sorry, Francis, please go.
Okay. Yeah, no worries. Yeah, I mean, I think in general, people are just eager, right, to see like Polkadot go live, and there's a lot of excitement around this, and people or users tend to be impatient, particularly when they're so enthusiastic about what Polkadot represents. I mean, in terms of affecting our project individually, I would say it hasn't affected it that much. There's still a ton of enthusiasm around the parachains and Moon River. We're seeing many projects deploy. So yeah, I also think that Kusama helped, right? This was kind of the point of Kusama, and parity they've never really said like Polkadot or Kusama are going to launch at this date. So the fact that supposedly it's delayed, I mean, technically it's not necessarily true, but yeah, I think Kusama launched earlier than a lot of people were anticipating. It was kind of a lot of teams, including us, were kind of taken by surprise. But I do think that just Kusama is very representative of the success to come with Polkadot. And I think the Polkadot auctions will start sooner than what people think. I don't know for sure, but I can only speak from like the Moonbeam and Moon River side. I would say that it hasn't really affected the progress of the project. I mean, we continue to work to grow out the ecosystem as much as possible. We continue to engage with projects that are adopting this kind of EVM targeted multi-chain deployment strategy, and I think the excitement and enthusiasm will just continue to grow from here. So yeah, I would say I'm pretty happy with the progress that has been made so far. Yeah.
Cool. Thanks for that, Marvin. I'll shoot to you because you seem to have thoughts as well.
Sorry, I just misunderstanding. You mentioned my name before. So okay,
No
so in our views, I think although because the total market and the community is formal at the moment, when people thought that Polkadot is such powerful religion and parachains with each other, but when they see so many applications, deployments on Solana, Polygon, they get FOMO. So they are, keep on asking that one Polkadot get into real, realities as soon as possible. But so to speak, I think people are over, expecting on Polkadot's launching speed, but they are actually undermined that the some things happened on parachains religion, or even just the substrate is far more beyond people's imagination. Because in general community or the DeFi users, they think they need a chain with EVM console, and it's good to go with gas fee, bridge with different chains to transfer a size. That's it. But actually, they couldn't imagine something like, for example, Ink smart contract can communicate with each other directly by XM in the future. And you can't, I can't even imagine the best practice or use cases for this kind of feature at the moment. But this could create something people never saw before. Let me put an example. I think RI market is some the MT platform is something I like very much, because just because it had more flexibility and scalability than other protocols, and it's just based on Kusama remark, systems and signature. It's very cool. So something like this, I think that would be a killer feature for Polkadot. And because of that, so we need to be patient and waiting for the true the real things coming up. So that's my take time for the best things. Yeah.
That is true. I think also anyone who's got a dev background really dislikes the idea of being governed by deadlines and perceived sort of launch dates, etc. Cool. I'll hand over to you, David, for your perspective on kind of Polkadot roadmap and how that's looking for the projects involved in the space.
Well, the Kusama tagline is "Expect Chaos," and so I think that sets the tone well. It's a wild place. It's where real things are happening economically, but it is a place where there's a lot of learning going on, and I think the ecosystem is flexible. It knows that these things are coming up, and to be ready. Like Francisco says, I don't think we were surprised when the first ones dropped, and I think also agree that the Polkadot auctions will come sooner than we collectively realize. And so, no, I think the teams by and large are plugging along, building, getting ready, and things are done when they're done. But there's a lot of people working very hard to see that they are done well. So I think timeline, there's really no issues, and it's kind of clicking along really well. So I think feeling really good about it.
Cool, thanks. And I'm glad we managed to get you back, Ming-Shi. What's your thoughts on No worries. What's your thoughts on Polkadot roadmap, and what it's like dealing with that as a project, and sort of kind of coordinate around the uncertainties there, but also the progress.
Yeah, I can only speak for cross network. I think the delay of Kusama auction or Polkadot's auction does not affect cross network a lot, since for cross network, parachain slot is more like it is a plus, but not an essential need, compared with Fala network or Moonbeam network or Asta network. Cross chose Polkadot ecosystem mainly because of the high performance of the substrate framework and Polkadot's cross-chain interoperability, which can provide cross to more use cases like paying storage fees with tokens from other parachains. But without connecting to Polkadot, cross still work as a high-performance data storage network. So actually, the well-known delay does not affect cross networks that much. Yeah.
Cool. Thanks for the frankness there, folks. I think that was really interesting for people kind of watching this space. It's also, I think, one of those things where it's classically easy for people to throw shade, and a delay is a great news piece if you've got nothing else on your desk today. It's something you can kind of throw around. So good to hear some kind of truth from the coalface around that one. We've seen, big growth in things like NFTs and stuff. What's are you guys seeing in terms of growth areas in the Polkadot system? What's really taking off that maybe you hadn't anticipated? Because I think this is a really interesting thing to me. Is like, how is that ecosystem filling out? Particularly given that it's a space where you want the diversity and you want lots of different projects involved, but at the same time, it's a limited space. So there's some competition to fill that. So again, maybe starting with you, Francisco, what are you seeing really growing in the space that maybe you hadn't anticipated or?
Yeah, sure. So I think since we launched Moon River, like you said, I mean, the two spaces that we're seeing the most rapid growth in are like NFTs and DeFi. I would say those two are kind of leading the charge. So I would expect that growth to carry on in the months and years to come. Yeah, I'd say that like I'm particularly interested in how like those two will evolve, especially when you apply it to like Kusama and the Polkadot ecosystem. I do think that like regulation will start to get heavier and heavier, and that kind of several dApps and just protocols that are kind of sitting in the middle between centralization and decentralization will become more binary, right? Like protocols will either have to go like fully decentralized, where it's just like you can't stop it, or like shift more into a slightly more centralized model where there's KYC and everything is more just a bit more controlled in that regard. And I don't think like regulation is a bad thing at all. I think that means the industry is maturing and it's people are starting to see it, taking it more seriously. And also just apply it to like Kusama and Polkadot. I'm really interested in seeing how this like interoperability will play out, right? I think this is why like most parachains picked Polkadot, right? This is what gets us excited, is like this natively built into the design interoperability. I think right now we're starting to see like signs of it cross-chain, like through bridges and things like this, between different layer ones, for example. But I think that's just step one, kind of like pure asset transfers. But I think what Polkadot and Kusama will bring to the table that is just like a complete innovation in the industry is like these like native use cases between chains that are not necessarily associated with assets, right? So for example, a dApp might deploy and kind of like make use of like what each parachain provides in terms of specialization, right? So they might go to Crust for storage, or for Moonriver for smart contracts, and things like this, where it's going to be kind of akin to an AWS model. So that, I think that's kind of where it's heading and how it's evolving, which is exciting. And then as Marvin mentioned before, kind of XCMP is starting to take shape. And in terms of kind of other areas where I'm excited to see blockchain take more traction, I would say, maybe this is my own personal opinion, like in the public sector, I think in general, kind of industries where trust is inherently built into the process of that industry, blockchain can improve it, right? Since it just makes trust irrelevant. And I think in the public sector, that would really positively impact. Whether or not like governments decide to use it or how they decide to use it is another topic. But yeah, I mean, I think in general, the notion of decentralization has this hype built into it, where it doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to be an overall better solution just because it's decentralized. But I do think that like in areas like DeFi, NFTs, like the public sector, prediction markets, and gaming, blockchain can really have a positive impact. So yeah, I mean, I think everyone is super excited to see how like this evolves, right? And it's such a young industry, so it's definitely great to be part of it and be on the front lines.
Cool, thanks for that. I think maybe I'll head to David on this one, because just mentioned prediction markets, but I think the theme that I'm hearing people talk about here, and we've heard XCMP mentioned a bunch of times, and if we're talking Web3 and Polkadot, the excitement seems to be around, and logically is around the interoperability between projects. You know, you can see like Kilt and LittenTree are almost designed to play together.
Sure.
So David, what are you seeing that sort of like in terms of these nexuses? Are you seeing anything starting to form that's maybe not predicted, or?
Sure. Well, I mean, yeah, I do think that interoperability is certainly a killer app in the Polkadot ecosystem. You know, it is early days. I think there besides what's been said, I think that there's some governance and treasury management applications that I'm seeing be built that are interesting, that will you know, be available to the parachains. I'd say the DeFi interoperability, that's something kind of expected, but you know, that's happening. So glad to see that. There's certainly, you know, Zeitgeist is talking with and working with a number of ecosystem projects. Some we've announced partnerships, others it'll be a while yet as we build. But yeah, we're building information networks that will allow folks on the relay chain to communicate and share information with each other very, very efficiently, as well as just, you know, incorporate different functionality between the projects and really create that synthesis of, you know, the sum is greater than the whole of the parts, or I'm butchering that, but the whole is greater than the sum of the parts, rather. So anyway, yeah, the interoperability story is unfolding. It's early, since we've got 8 projects and we've just launched in the last few months, but very promising feature.
Cool, thanks, Marvin. I'm going to throw to you, and I'm just looking at the clock and the question list. So maybe add on to the question, because you kind of raised thoughts around the versions of XCMP, and I'm not actually as familiar with that as I might be. But yeah, what are you seeing coming in that's unexpected? But then also maybe follow on to, and I'll loop this back through the group, if XCMP is up to it, you know, can it handle the load, or do we need to look at some other engineering or other options for kind of getting that interoperability serviced, I suppose?
Yeah, this is very good question. I think First, I want to also answer a little bit about your question about how the community feels like in Substrate or Polkadot. I have to say that all the ecosystem participators have to work together very closely so that we can get the best advantage to join this ecosystem. I mean, you can't fight alone. The projects like, for example, Polkaverse, Saito, at the moment you are building your own substrate chains, but in the meanwhile you also get can easily transfer into kinds of parachains and then engage with other parachains. So so for the use cases, we have to work together to get the best part of Polkadot, which is lead to your question, is the interface with each other. I think we are working on something special. For example, we are putting ink smart contract inside TE so that we can maybe add some actual information or data with the channel of XMP. The XMP is very pretty, will looks like pretty like how to say, the information link with different smart contracts or parachains, but it have limited standard because it need to keep as simple as possible or as standard as possible, right? You can't add anything you like on it. For example, if Akala wants to add some standards on XMP, so does Moon River, and so does Kala, then all things will mix up. So the co-builders need to keep the channel as simple, as clean as possible, so that it will be a very neat and high efficiently work standard protocol. But in the meanwhile, we do have many custom self-customized requirements or needs for the business. For example, when I want to transfer some secret tokens from Kala to Moon River, or I want to just transfer from for BSC sites via the Kala bridge to Moon River, then I definitely need to talk with Francisco here to to make some standards, so that the Kala assets can get into a mirror. But so for use cases like this, we can't just add it directly via XMP. But in the meanwhile, we can use some outspace channels, which is also bonded with XMP messengers, so that we can pass through some actual remarks, information. And to make that happen, we need quite flexible design and ability. For example, we need to trust the actual information channel. So I think TE is quite a good channel for that. So we are building something like this to maximize the use cases and the value of XMP. And on the other hand, as I mentioned, I think ink smart contract is quite new, and very few people tried that before. Most of the people are using EVM at the moment, but I have very deep faith in ink, because I think it is exactly what fits for Polkadot ecosystem to make the cross-chain smart contract interface with different parachains. This can never happen on any layer of Ethereum, or happen on any side chains like BSA or Polygon, and this is only belongs to substrate-based ecosystem. And let's see how it works. For example, SushiSwap, they have already enabled like 7 blockchains, but there's the same smart contract on 7 blockchains can't communicate with each other. They can only do it by token transfer between bridges like AnySwap. So, but after XMP is successfully used and ink is successfully used, you can just use one smart contract on freaking 20 blockchains communicating with each other. That would be brain fuck. So I was very looking forward on that. Yeah.
Right. Cool. Maybe I'm not seeing Mingshi. I think he's possibly having technical difficulties. Turn off his camera. So,
I think, yeah,
oh, there you are.
I think there. Oh, yeah, I'm not sure. Probably, yeah, there is something wrong with my camera. Yeah.
Okay. Go ahead. I'm glad to hear from you.
Yeah, sorry, I kind of got nervous. Could you please give me a hint about the question?
Sure, no worries. So we've sort of combined two questions about what people are seeing coming out of the interaction between parachains, but I think also alongside that, the ability of XCMP as a protocol to handle, the information flows and things like that. So, just interested in your thoughts on any experience Crust has on that question.
Yeah, actually, based on cross network, we haven't explored about cross-chain interoperability a lot right now because we haven't connected to Kusama relay chain right now. We are still testing on the testnet of Kusama.
Right.
But definitely, we can expecting a lot of user cases for XMP protocol and the cross-chain interoperability in the Polkadot ecosystem. Take a simple example, as Marvin just mentioned, if people want to transfer tokens from one parachain to another parachain, they want to do it secretly, they can use Fala network. And maybe I can give some other examples. If I have an NFT on a certain parachain and like maybe state my, and in the future, and I want to use it for the NFT finance protocol like Asta or Moonbeam or other parachains, the XMP can give a lot of work. And also XMP also gives the developer a lot of space for the protocol design. Like we can see a lot of cross-chain protocols right now within the Polkadot ecosystem, like ZenLink and PolkaEX. Yeah, and also another use case based on Cross is that developers will be able to like pay storage fees using tokens from other network, using their assets from other network. Yeah, and probably like users will also be able to use like multiple assets. Like they can use assets from their assets on Akala, and their like they can use car and dots to as collateral to make synthetic assets on other parachains like Shiden, like Fala. Yeah.
Cool. Thanks for that. And David, any thoughts on the topic as well? And specifically CMP and its sort of capacity?
Yeah, other than the great responses, no.
It's specific. So.
Yeah. So I've hung on my technicals first a while back, but yeah, thanks for the info.
Cool.
From the rest of the panelists.
Yeah, no, it's something that came up. I think for me when I was early in the year, I went to a bunch of Polkadot meetups, and this was a common topic of interest: is will CMP actually handle the load? It's a particular task. It's also one of the things I think in the Polkadot space it's unique to Polkadot. So it doesn't, like Marvin said, doesn't have, if you're building a new smart contract system, you've got the EVM and a bunch of others to compare to. Whereas XCMP it's a new piece of tech in the space. So we'll have to kind of see how it grows out. I think we've got a couple of, just before we wind this one up, we've got a couple of questions from the audience. One is directed specifically at Francisco, which is, with a slot in October, do you guys anticipate launching during Q4?
Yeah, I mean, it really depends on when Parity kind of announces the start of the auctions, right? I have no idea when they will do so. I expect that it will happen like in Q4. I would imagine that kind of parity will allow for users to unbond their DOT before the auction start, which is around 28 days. And after that, I mean, we'll be ready to kind of participate in the auctions via crowd loan. And I think Moonbeam will kind of undertake a similar process that Moonriver did. So after winning an auction, it'll take approximately 4 to 6 weeks in kind of this phased approach where we'll release like the functionality of the network and kind of different tiers. With the last phase kind of being enabling balance transfers and the EVM. So yeah, I would say Q4 is reasonable, but at this point, like nothing is set in stone, right? So I can't really, I don't really want to commit to anything.
Yeah. Did anyone else want to take on that question for their respective project if they've got something to announce? If not, I think the other question. We've actually got a question here for me that I should answer, which is Saito chasing a parachain slot? And we're not substrate based, so we really can't. But we've got a great relationship with the Polkadot space, which I think causes some people to assume we must be a substrate based chain. But our solution is really quite sort of different, and a little bit separate. Cool. Well, I think just looking through the questions here. Those are probably the relevant ones that haven't actually been answered. Most of these have been actually answered by now. So I might wind up this session here. Thank you for your time. I think we've come to a good end. We'll close this off, and then up next is Vishnu Korda from StackOS doing a demonstration. So thanks everyone here for your time and your appearance on this great session.
Thanks a lot. It was a pleasure to be here, and thanks for having me.
Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.
Thank you, everyone.
Have a good day.
Thanks, guys.
Bye-bye.
Have a great day. Bye-bye.
Bye. Cool. Let me just grab Vishnu from the user and invite Vishnu back. So I think he's going to give us a bit of a walkthrough on actually using a product demonstration for StackOS, which will be a nice change from the row of talking heads you've had. Hey, Vishnu, great to have you back. Oh, we've got a little bit of delay and lag. Are you hearing us well? Okay, we have no sound for you, Vishnu. Are you perhaps muted?
No, the reason is I was muted, right?
It's always the best
can you hear me
reason
now?
because it's easily fixed. Yes, we can hear you clearly. Cool. Well, without more
awesome.
talking, I'll let you take over the screen and kick off your demonstration.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. I can start with sharing my screen. I'll probably just share my entire desktop just to make it easy for everyone. And I'll probably just start with the overview and like why are we doing what we are doing. All right. So basically I've been involved in moving, as I said, applications from data centers to the cloud and really seeing how organizations function. What we also do have is and my experience tells me that usually any organization mid to small or small to mid even they spend hundreds of $1,000s to $500,000 or more just in the DevOps resources and expenses. And despite all of that, you will see downtimes everywhere across the board. Either it's due to security reasons because applications are not built correctly. The infrastructure for the application that it's running is not built properly to scale, and also that you have seen these data centers which always frequently have downtimes and things. So this is where StackOS is coming with a pitch, and you're using my experience there. That how do you decentralize this network and make it as rock solid foundation that any application can be deployed within minutes and extremely quickly and reliably, right? So just trying to be the Amazon Web Services for Web3. So I'll just probably show that I'm on the BSC network right now, right? But and I'm using a demo account. I'll just do connect, and this is a cluster which I'm using. This is usually a cheaper. So we have two different kinds of services, right? So you could basically pick a standard cluster, which is typically 99.4% uptime per node. But eventually, when you talk at the cluster level, it goes it's 100% pretty much of uptime. just as long as you deploy applications correctly and you have multiple redundancy of your apps. And high performance clusters 99.92%. Again, much higher uptime, but very little difference between the two. But the price, I think, is substantially different between the two. So connecting just your Titan cluster, you sign in. You basically you're signing a transaction, and you get into the dashboard of StackOS. And I think one of the key features I'm going to talk about here is going to be how simple the experience is while running applications on StackOS, right? So you basically come here, go to the upgrade page, and then you pick any combination of CPU, memory, storage, and the bandwidth your application potentially needs. So in this case, I'll just pick some random number. Memory would be, let's say, 2000 as well. I would just take 5 gigs and 100 GB as bandwidth. All I'll do is just do upgrade. That's when I'm just signing the transaction, just making sure I am paying the stack tokens I need. I need 1036 stack tokens to be able to really reserve those kind of resources on the decentralized cloud. Once the transaction goes through, you would start to see that the resources are located and we're ready for deployments. So it says your plan is upgraded successfully. That means these resources are reserved on those networks. Come to the dashboard, you'll see the test nets. If you deploy test application, test nets here. If you see, you'll see applications that they deployed here and the database as it comes up, right? So going through a very simple workflow of deploying, let's say, a WordPress application, which is usually a very, very simple tool for people to understand, like what power of StackOS can be. You can just come here, deploy, and then you have obviously options of different configurations you want to change here, and how much compute and the memory resources you need for each of your web app service and your database service. So basically, right? So this is a DB, and then you can pick your resource requirements here. You can pick the kind of database you need here, and but that's just right, and pretty much. You can deploy side. You will see there's one button, right? All I did was open the App Store, clicked on WordPress, and all I'm doing is deploy app, right? So once I click the button deploy app, again, the resources are on the decentralized cloud, as I said. You will shortly see a message here saying that, okay, your application is deployed. It's very interesting to read this, right? It says the WordPress app and the DB. That means there are two different services which actually make up the WordPress application live, right? So in the decentralized cloud, it's telling you that this is the DNS, the domain which has been reserved or has been given to you to be able to really see if the application is working as expected. What also tells you is an internal DNS. That means within your reserved area, securely, you can interact between one or two of your internal applications with each other. Like in this case, as I said, the database and a WordPress front end, right? And they talk with each other. So this is what they use internally to talk with each other. Again, that's kind of it's more application configuration. You will see more a number of applications coming here within the App Store, and Saito, I think, is committed to having one of their apps here as well, and like many of the projects which are working with us right now. So as I just showed you earlier, I copied that URL there, and I press this, and within literally like 30 seconds or so, you would basically see this application is up. So this is like extremely fast, and going to any of the cloud providers even now, or no matter how extensive your knowledge is, it is extremely difficult to get any service up and running so quickly. Like for DevOps, as I said, right? Organizations takes $100,000 to manage the infrastructure, at least of $100,000, right? Using DevOps engineering resources and a cloud spend, and also encompassing the way in which you can keep your service or your website up and live every single time. So this is it completely removes the cost point of view also, but also it also streamlines the time to market. So products, if you are building on AWS, it will easily take you 2 weeks to 3 weeks or even more to really configure the cloud environments to ensure that everything is secure and the network is is stable and also is able to perform well. So this way it completely streamlines that process. From there, I'll just give you a quick another demonstration of how you can basically deploy a regular app, like not necessarily from the App Store, but something which you can deploy, right? So you can write the code for an app. Let's say Explorer is an app, and all developer need to do is make an image of that on Docker, and it's extremely simple to do that. It's usually very not just crypto native, but also it is the next way, or the modern way in which applications are written and deployed. You could have it on a private image as well, or you could have it on the public Docker registry. You just define what ports they need to be accessed from, like the container port and the service port. And you always have an option to choose your own domain, right? So you could basically pick what you like a domain which you have worked with before, and and use that. But you just do continue. You choose the compute resources for running this app. In this case, I'll just pick 100 millicore, and I'll pick let's say 100 MB for memory as well. And I can make it a persistent storage. I can add it by click of a button. For this particular app, I don't need a persistent storage, so I'll just leave this the way it is. Continue, and I can just see that it's going to be available to everyone once it's deployed, and I can just click on the button, create application. So there you see it says app is deployed now on the decentralized cloud, literally with a click of a button. And you can come here on the next tab, paste, enter, and the Ethereum Lite Blockchain Explorer is up and ready, right? So this is extremely simple for anyone to just come on board and deploy apps and make it that easy for them to run, and easily to scale and manage as well. And again, I think this is like kind of the core utility and the strength of that, right? Again, all you do is completely crypto native. You come here, buy the stack tokens, and then use the stack tokens to lock into the contract, and that's then used to commit your resources with the cloud service, the decentralized cloud. Of course, you can always change this at any time. You can pretty much go here and change the requirements for each of those apps. You can go back to the Explorer, for example, and you can say, hey, you know what? I need 200 units of CPU, right? And you can just pick that, and you can just reapply this. If you want to do if you want to increase the number of replica accounts, you can just say, hey, I want 5 replica accounts of the same service instead of just 1. So you can even scale horizontally and vertically as you go. So vertically means when you are increasing the compute resources per app, and horizontally means that how many pods do you want to scale to be able to serve behind the service. So as more applications get deployed or more traffic comes in, it scales up horizontally to serve more traffic. Let's go here, update, and then you would have an app which has got 200 CPU, millicores of CPU instead of 100 earlier. So yeah, I mean, this is what StackOS is doing, and I think that's how powerful it is to run apps from the App Store or something which you are writing your own project on, right? So you can have your own React app or any stateful and stateless application to be able to really run apps at scale, extremely simple and completely sticking with native world.
Cool. I mean, I think for me, the thing that we were kind of I met Vishnu because an investor was sort of like, you need to talk to these guys, and I kind of went and looked at the dashboard and things and thought, oh, I should try and use it. And the thing that kind of flipped me from, oh, this is something I already know, but they just changed the payment system to crypto, to, oh, this is really powerful, is both realizing I'm doing all my permissioning simply with a sign. So there's that feeling you have when you realize I never created a username here. No one's storing my password. It's on me to, I better make sure the MetaMask wallet that I created for this is properly backed up, because, I've got autonomy here. But then also when I saw the ability to just throw in a Docker container, so I went and looked for a stateless Docker app that I could just find in the archive. Something I'd been wanting to use was just a live markdown editor, and going through that process that you just went through and realizing, oh, that's actually very, very useful. The ability to just publish a Docker container or find one of the existing ones and throw it up that way is really pretty cool, and would allow projects, I think, to one of the last pieces where you don't need to touch the fiat world. Your feet don't need to touch the ground. You can kind of stay entirely in the space. So cool, pretty impressive. I'm also
actually,
go for it.
Since
Sorry.
you mentioned that, right, to give people an idea of what Docker is, right? I mean, I'll just quickly share this again. Sorry here, but you can just do Docker Hub.com, and the WordPress app is nothing but an already existing app on Docker, right? So it's no rocket science. You search for WordPress, and then you have the WordPress official library, right? And all you do was just pick the data from from this, right? So if you notice, right, I mean, all information about the databases, and it comes from here basically. You saw those variables I had used there, right? Same thing over here. It told you to use a SQL database. It just told you a WordPress app, which is a WordPress image. All you do is just pick up these values from here, and you stick it into the into the UI, and click a button, an app, bam, app's there. So I think it's so simple. Right? I mean, it's simpler than people would actually think it is, and I think that's what makes it so powerful, even for the ones who didn't know what Docker is and what image that is.
Yeah, I mean, I think most of my struggles with it were being an old sysadmin and anticipating more friction than there really was. I think the other thing there is the roadmap is pretty comprehensive. So what have you got coming up? I know people in the chat were wanting hints as to the upcoming partnerships, but what's coming up on that roadmap for you guys?
Yeah, I mean, again, let me just share my screen. I think it's a beautiful way in which I think how we showcase, like what our progress is. So 1 second, motion. All right. Are you able to see my screen, guys?
Yes, yep, you're sharing it. So
okay, fantastic. All right, excellent. So this is called the StackOS Citadel, which tells you like what is the current progress, what is the current task definition, and all things, right? So current task definition is what we are actively working on right now, and usually that will be defined in what's in progress. Again, we are a service which is already live, and we're serving real customers, and that's why we have like feature requests one after another. In the last month and a half, we have done at least 7 or 8 feature deployments to production. And organizations are using all those new features, like one of them being SSL certificates, and I'm using that to be able to use in the domain which they own. So that's one thing, right? So that is the current task definition, and the StackOS stages is what defines the overall holistic picture of what StackOS is going to do and achieve over the long term. We intentionally don't give timelines, and I think Richard, I think, mentioned in the previous in the panel that developers don't like timelines, and the reason being is that you need to prioritize functionality requirements of the current users while also having strategic goal towards how do you achieve a real God mode, right? For your application. So that's something which we closely work with. So again, StackOS stages, much like I think how Cardano defines its roadmaps, or if you look at Ethereum, how they define the roadmaps, is how StackOS also defines its overarching roadmap in terms of ORAS. So we that's how did a proof of concept, or got customer feedback. Then we had testnet deployment, which had about 1,000 applications running on StackOS within few hours. So that was the scalability in which we achieved that, right? Again, mainnet, which happened like a little over a month back, right? So all those things like goalposts which you're doing, and again, most of these items are working across stages. So it's not like we're going to wait for the last stage to finish, because some of them are very research oriented, and there's a lot of technology, back and forth going there, which makes it so comprehensive and scalable, right? So, all the research material is a constant growing, so that we can, design the development to cater to all of those future requirements, or the design aspects we'll be reaching and achieving. And there's a lot of research which goes on. So I think that's very powerful. So, the governance is all, 65%. We just give an overall understanding of what we're doing right now, or in the plans, right? So, going from there to NFT marketplace, we talked about that in the panel discussion today. The analytics dashboard, where users can see how many applications are being deployed every single day on StackOS. To give a picture of and increase even the trust. Like okay, this is what StackOS is serving in a decentralized cloud, and how many more applications can go, and it just brings in the confidence for even bigger and bigger projects to come and deploy on StackOS, right? So that again, how do you decentralize the CI/CD, which is continuous integration and continuous deployment, towards those apps? Again, I don't want to go over every of these items, but how do you support multi-chain deployments? And I think we should move further ahead than 10%. We should probably update this. But that's again a work which we have been doing to support different chains. And coming to the Kartika stage, which is like the stage where we actually become God mode, right? Where all the applications within the decentralized network keep moving from one cluster to another in a very, very decentralized and without any central authority running it or maintaining it. And that's kind of what we are looking at, right? The God mode, we say, the inter-cluster application neural network for StackOS. So that's something which we are really excited about, and looking forward to sharing the progress with you guys here. Again, you can always see the marketing and what are the plans for marketing from this stage, right? Usually, the StackOS Citadel is the place where you want to go and check out about StackOS and what we are doing here. So, yeah.
Cool. Thanks for that. I'm just going to check if there's any audience questions, but I think we've pretty much used up most of the time as well. So if there are no audience questions, I think we can probably wind up. Really impressive, man. Thank you for that.
Thank you so much, Richard. Thanks for having me here.
And real pleasure. So let's wind this up, and I will start up the next panel. Next panel will be probably a really sweet change for everyone in that I'll be handing over hosting duties to Crypto Jemmy, from the box mining team. She'll be moderating that panel, and I'll start bringing the participants up on to screen now. So participants on the panel are David Lancashire, work on the first panel as well from Polygon, and introducing John Wang from so I'll just get John added in. And Jemmy should be coming in as well, and I'll hand over to her once she's in. Hi again, David, Charlie.
Hello.
Hello.
Hi, I can see Jemmy there.
Hi, can you guys see me?
We can.
Good.
And
Good.
we're just waiting for John to connect. Okay, that seems to be possibly the wrong John. I'll let you take over, Jemmy, and I'll work on getting the correct John up on screen.
Okay, sure. Thank you, Richard.
No worries.
Oh, that's a nice cat.
He's lovely. He's really affectionate, and he hates every other cat.
Any good Saito broadcast has a cat in it at some point.
He's purring like crazy. Another cat comes, it's end of days. So.
I should have bought my dog as well. I have 2 puppies.
I have 2 birds.
Too bad.
I have children. But, so yeah, I'll hand over to you, Jemmy, and I'll work on getting John on screen.
Okay. Sure. Should we start without John, or should we wait?
Yes, just get moving, and it'll only be a few seconds. I just need to get the right person up from the user list. It's
okay, sure.
Searching.
Yeah, maybe we just wait for John.
In the meantime, his name is Harry. He's
Harry.
He's a yellow cat.
Nice to meet you, Harry.
And he needs affection.
I have a poodle and a chihuahua.
Yeah. Right. I have John into the mix. He's accepting and connecting. I attempted to add the incorrect John, who politely declined. So I believe I have the right John now. Accepted and connecting. And I will step aside for the remainder of the session.
Okay.
Okay, so let's get started. So good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, depending on where you are in the world. I'm Jamie from the Box Mining channel, and more importantly, I'm your host in this panel talking about Web3 fundamentals and why it matters. I've got some very inspiring people in this panel today, so I'm going to introduce them now. First, we have the co-founder of Saito, David. Hello, David. How are you feeling today?
We're doing pretty well. I think we're low resolution as usual. But
it's fine. You look great. And then we have the head of Polygon China, Charlie. Charlie who? Yeah, how are you feeling today?
I'm doing good.
Oh,
yeah.
so John is coming in as well.
John
Perfect
just coming.
timing.
Yes. Right on time.
Hello, John.
Hello.
Still loading on the camera. Hello, John.
Hey, can you hear me?
Yeah, I do. We can hear you.
Yeah, it's great. Thank you.
So finally, we have the head of Neo Eco Growth, John Wang, who has many years of experience in management consulting. Hello, John. My name is Jamie. How are you feeling?
Good. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too. So the panel today will be discussing everything about Web3, and we notice more and more people talking about Web3, but not necessarily understand what it means. So in this panel, of course, we have some very inspiring guests to talk about it and explain more about it in depth. But before we get into topic, make sure you hit that like button and follow Saito on both Twitter and Telegram. So without further ado, let's jump right into the questions. So I would like to start something with more light-hearted and more simple questions. I would like to ask every single one of the guests, how did you get into crypto? So let's start with David. How did you start in crypto?
China 2012, 2013. There was the Assange, free speech really matters, freedom of the press, big fan. And so, of course, it kind of, I think everyone knows about it, and then something pushes them. And that was what pushed me. And I went to the first meetup. It was like Beida in Beijing. And some guy brought out a physical ASIC mining machine. And it was like the first mining machine. And everyone in the room was like, oh my God, this is crazy. And I'm like, where the hell have I ended up? But it was interesting, and you go from there and it's the rabbit hole. And 5 years later, you're in blockchain discussions and everyone else is looking at you like, what the hell's going on? But you have no interest in going back. So that was me. Charlie, you guys?
Yeah. So my journey is kind of similar to David, but in very different location, right? I just finished I was in Amsterdam in 2013. I just finished my master's degree. Well, after a year, and then started doing a lot of startup stuff in the accelerator called Rockstart, right? So the first time I get to know Bitcoin was in the Amsterdam Bitcoin meetup, actually in one of the Amsterdam coffee shop. So I was actually guiding one of my friend in the coffee shop, and some of the very hardcore Bitcoin maximalism. I believe at that time they are definitely Bitcoin maximum. There's no other cryptocurrency that much anytime. Anyway, right? We have very few in that time. So we were talking about the Bitcoin mining, and I actually saw they were actually showing the FPGA. They didn't even have the ASIC miners. So yeah, and then since then I started to do research about big blockchain and getting involved in Ethereum in 2015. So that was like in Berlin, that was more things getting serious and start to do more research about blockchain technology, not just a cryptocurrency. And I would say the career of blockchain started in 2017, right? When things getting more settled after the ICO ban and all the other things. But a lot of new projects kind of start to evolve. actually including Neo, right? I kind of get to learn what is Neo and all the other new blockchain infrastructure since 2017. That's how I got started. Yeah.
John, what's your story?
Thanks for mentioning the Neo. Yeah, actually, I know the blockchain quite earlier. The same as Charlie, actually, I know the blockchain when I was in the university. At that moment, I'm in Australian, and we do have a course. It's called the financial modeling, and our lecturer is mentioned about the Bitcoin to us. So I doing some research and to know, okay, what's Bitcoin? I think, oh, this thing is cool, but I'm not actually doing anything at that moment. So after I back to the China on the then my friends mentioned to me about the Bitcoin again at the 2016. But at that moment, we can see like the reason he mentioned to me is like it's Australian friend, and he mentioned to me is because they say the price difference in the Chinese exchange and some of the overseas exchanges. So he's asking us to help to register Chinese the exchange account. So actually they can take the profit with price difference. So I doing the same thing, learning from like how to make the money by this way. So then yeah. So then at the moment I do some research about the Bitcoin and to know some new project. At that moment it also do have some like some ICO project, and you can join it, and it's really make some money for me. And then they asked me about, oh, do you know a project called the End Shell? So at that moment, it called the End Shell. Then okay, I think I was a cool project in China. So I trying to reach the team. Then I know, okay, this is so I'm thinking like, okay, maybe I can join this industry and to learning. It's not just to invest to do the investment. You also can do something in blockchain world. So yeah, so that's how I joined the blockchain. Yeah.
Cool, very interesting indeed. Thank you guys, really appreciate it. So right now, let's move on to some questions that are more Web3 based. So the first question I've got is, do you guys like pineapple pizza?
Do we like what? Pineapple pizza?
Pineapple pizza.
Amazing.
Sorry,
Yes.
it was meant to be a joke. It was apparently a very, very bad joke. Well, actually, I would like to ask each panelist if you could share your understanding on Web3. So let's start with David. What's your understanding on Web3?
I think it's a PKI network that pays for itself and exists. Obviously, it's open. Everyone can use it. Open access, equal access, and it pays for itself. And the really important thing is the combination of those two, because historically, the only way we've been able to support networks that have had costs is to give them an owner, and giving them an owner gives them a trusted third party. I think it's a lot of people, it's like Web3, it's tokens, and it's, we're going to do this and we're going to do that. And I think I think the problem with that is that people focus on decentralization and they focus on tech, and they forget that it needs to be open and permissionless. But yeah, in general, you have that kind of network and you're using keys, and it's a PKI network. So
great, really good explanation indeed. And how about Charlie? What's your understanding on Web3?
Yeah, it's right. I think there are two key words David just mentioned. I agree totally. Which one is open, the other is permissionless, right? But I think that if we talk about a Web3 tech stack, it's actually quite fundamental change and quite new compared to the existing Web2 and tech stack, right? We have the libp2p and on the communication layer. We have all kinds of layer ones sits on as a blockchain layer. And then we have all kinds of layer 2 scaling solutions, and also on the adoption layer we have a lot of new blockchain powered applications with a very different architect, very different logic compared to the existing centralized and Web2 applications. And certain attributes is completely different. I would say compared to the existing Web 2 world. One is definitely on the permissionless side, right? It's not you don't necessarily need a third party as authority to approve things. All these things are kind of protected actually, and initiated through the cryptology based smart contract or some other ways of logic. And we also talk a lot about distributed storage, privacy, and some of the very important modules that is enabling the Web3. So I think there's a lot of building Legos still remains to be done and to make the complete Web3. But I think in what we have been seeing as some kind of a common alignment is, and there's interesting different layers that essentially to be the open permissionless in the Web3 ecosystem.
Yeah, yeah. I think
we lose Jenny again.
It's frozen. Okay. I think that Charlie and the David has explained Web3 very clearly. So from my side, I think it's just the one thing I think it's I wanted to say is like I believe like people always saying like the Web3 is quite centralized and the Web3 is quite decentralized. But from my side, I believe for the Web3, it's also maybe it can be like the decentralized and the centralized is both exist. So decentralized is more like we're talking about the DAO, we're talking about some of the permissionless. But it's not means like all the business is actually suited for this kind of the strategy, so structure. So I think for the currently is lots of business will still existing in the centralized system, but for the Web3 maybe it can use the decentralized way to having the lots of the currently the business is running more efficiency and have some new the innovation. Yes, thanks.
Great.
Jimmy.
So sorry, I was having some technical issue, but I think it's okay now. So let's move on to the next question. What innovation has surprised you the most this last year? Let's start with David again.
Oh, it's always me first. I want a free ride on these guys' answers. I'm actually curious what you guys are going to say. For me, the big surprise, and maybe it's late to the party, but it was like decentralized exchanges, how quickly they're coming, and just the massive shift in power in the space, because it's super easy to forget that like 1 to 2 years ago, centralized exchanges, I think, were kind of running the show, and they had their own fiefdoms, even in stuff like VC. Like I remember when when Saito was just an idea, there were like different fiefdoms and it was all clustered around exchanges. And I just, I get the sense that's changing really quickly and it's such a positive movement. And I think it's great for us with Saito because like we're network layer big data. And it's a great reminder that there's so much value. Like, people want tokens on BSC even. And I was like, that's cool. You can have permissionlessness on upper layers of permission systems. That's cool. So yeah, I think it's fantastic, but it surprised me how fast it's been.
Cool. Thank you, David. So how about Charlie? What innovation has surprised you the most this last year?
Since last year, right? So it's not like 2 years ago. I would say DeFi has been fascinating me quite a lot, but it's not last year. Since last year, I would say it's actually the embracing of NFT and the GameFi. It's like I think I got to know about DeFi since 2018 already, right? And I think 2020 was the year of DeFi. 21 is definitely the year of NFT and the mass adoption of GameFi. That a lot of the people who actually come from the art and the gaming background actually entering the space. And ERC 721 and 1155, all the other standard has been utilized truly. I mean, compared to 2018, CryptoKitties was a very little proof of concept or experiment, right? And we see a mass adoption on the NFT side is coming up. One of the specific innovation within the NFT space I feel most fascinating, I'm a big fan of that, is Loot. It's actually being a very big topic this summer, right? Well, I think the bottom-up approach to get people to realize NFT have composability, purchasing some different type of NFT with different attributes written on that property, that can be like an interesting building Lego to form gaming guilds within the Discord, and those people with like-minded can actually co-create some kind of game together. And we see some innovation like a Rarity and some other synthetic roots actually going up, which is very fascinating. Compared to like traditional game or NFT creation, you see a lot of the creators are more like in the God's mode, right? They have their worldview. They think that's kind of thing which is cool, meaningful, but they create by themselves, right? It's kind of top-down, centralized way of create things, which users basically can only be, you either like it or you don't like it, right? You purchase it or not purchase it. And now you, with this kind of loot model, you really find a way to bottom up create stuff. The game not necessarily has to be built 100% by game creator, right? It's like a constant interactive feedback loop within the Discord community. I find it's very fascinating, and it would fundamentally change how game or all the other new things getting created by having NFT holders co-create that together. And that kind of consensus is very interesting because they have been through a journey together from 0 to 1, not just be like, how to say, fast food consumer. You get something delivered, they either purchase it or not, right? Don't really care for the future. I think that's something very fascinating to me as innovation.
Awesome. Thank you, Charlie. And how about John? What innovation has surprised you the most this last year?
Yeah, I think like actually for the last year, like no matter for the DeFi and NFT, it both have lots of the development. Actually, we already know the DeFi and the NFT project from the 2018, but at that moment it's still like the very early stage. But from the 2020, I think for the DeFi, it's really become very good. The example for like how the blockchain technology can improve the efficiency for the financial industry. So we can actually see like, for example, for no matter for the compound RV, like they already have, I believe like the 22 billion of the asset. It's being management. But the team is maybe roughly like the 30 or 40 the people. But we can thinking about like if the same amount of the asset for the traditional the financial institution, it's definitely more than 1,000 people to manage this kind of asset. So I think like it already can approve like the blockchain technology actually can highly improve the efficiency. And also for the NFT, I think like it's already become a very good the channel for the people who is not know the blockchain very well to understanding like what is the blockchain and why we actually should be use it. So for the NFT side, I think I really like it because before when we're talking about my friend, even my wife said about what is the DeFi, and I'm trying to teach her to use the MetaMask, but she is always to refuse me, say it's too complicated. But when I'm talking about the NFT, it's really helping them to learn how to use to do the investment to this industry. So I think like it's hard for me to explain like the innovation from the technical side, but I think for the business side, like no matter for the DeFi and the NFT, it's really to helping this industry to move to the next step. Thanks.
Thank you so much. So let's move on to the next question. What are the strongest drivers for uptake in the Web3 space? So feel free to jump in. Whoever wants to
this first.
I will take this one first. I'll take this one first. I think the driver, sits on multiple layers, right? I'll start with the network or maybe the infrastructure layer. ZK is something I really feel it could be a very interesting driver. We see multiple zero knowledge proof type of scaling solution coming up. Like recently, one of biggest news within the Polygon's ecosystem is this acquisition. Right, we had this $250 million acquisition that acquired the Hermes zero knowledge proof research team, one of the I would say most senior ZK research team based in Europe. I think ZK on the EVM will be a very interesting scaling solution upcoming. I see several other infrastructure layer projects like Loopring and Saito Network, some other layer 2 solutions actually adopting ZK as well. So that's kind of a very interesting driver. We're going to see that with ZK, we can unlock some other interesting, scaling solution for all kinds of blockchain infrastructures. On the other modules, I think distributed storage is very important. So like I think John and David also mentioned that we have the DeFi and NFT, all the adoptions, right? We really get into the tipping point. We're gonna go embrace more and more mass adoptions. So the on-chain data, all kinds of assets, right, needs to find a fair open and a distributed way to store all the assets and data. So we see very big demand upgrade growth on the IPFS of Filecoin and Arweave or all the other distributed storage side, and several other distributed storage solutions actually working with Polygon and many other layer 1 as well. So not necessarily the supply side, right? We used to see all kinds of supply side, all the miners trying to get in. Now we see some real demand side in the space, entering the space. On the adoption layer, the driver, I think the main driver which still remains to be unlocked is the fiat on-ramp, right? So most of the DeFi or NFT stuff are still stays within this inner circle of a big Ethereum holders or crypto holders, right? So I think it's still a main issue for a lot of the traditional people who are interested in, let's say, wants to purchase a collectible or game asset. You can really easily, seamlessly use a fiat on-ramp solution, to do that. Although there are already some kind of good solutions in the space, but not that well promoted or mass adopted yet. Like Polygon has been actively using with collaborating with like MoonPay, SimpleX, some kind of US fiat on-ramp. But I think it's still a long way to go to get a lot of people from all to able to use fiat to purchase or entering the NFT or the Web3 gaming or DeFi side, right? And Aave is setting up the Aave Pro and several other projects trying to get the institutional version, but I think still a very early stage. So the fiat on-ramp is very important driver as well.
Thank you very much. How about John? What are your strongest drivers for uptake in the Web3 space?
Yeah, I think like except the technology side is drive, and also I believe like with more, it's always be the human and the asset. With more and more the asset actually being involved in the blockchain, in the crypto, and the people know like how the crypto world can, or how it's working. So I think the Web3 is already become like we need lots of infrastructure actually to support they are to doing like to some business activities and something else or some innovations. So all this like the demand and all this infrastructure will be the, I believe it will be the most important the drivers for the Web3 is happening. Yeah, thank you.
I guess I'll go. What I think our perspective is a bit different than people because you guys you're really deeply in the finance and the token space, and I think we're much more in the application space. So it's kind of interesting because I take a look at things like gaming, and we're in a weird position because the places that we're getting organic, genuine adoption are often niche. It's like people, the blockchain service comes along and they don't really care about the blockchain. They care that all of a sudden someone is doing this thing and it's what they need. And I kind of wonder, like, well, to what extent, like, niches where on the application side, like the finance side, it's token speculation. Okay, it's a pay to play game, or it's a play to earn game. Like, people are doing it for the money, and it's this financial form of interaction. Like even the Loot project, like that's the name, right? It's Loot. I see that. I'm looking at it. I'm kind of curious. Like, this might be where gaming blows up. But it also might be that what happens is with gaming in other areas, the applications, maybe they start mainstream, right? Like, most of the people that come to the arcade that we've got, they'll want to play something like poker because they know how to play it. But those people who want to play poker, they're also the most likely to be using these Fiat poker systems or whatever if they want to do that. And it's the niche games that it's kind of a lot harder, where people are gravitating and they're sticking around. So I think it's a tough question. I think it's easier to have an answer coming from the money side. From the application side, I think we're seeing different kinds of growth. The people I love are the people that come for the niche stuff, because they're coming for the experience in the app. But I think the real growth is going to happen when the mainstream stuff connects, like Charlie said, with these, like, when we've got Web3 cryptos running and really integrated with those apps, I think that's actually going to be a bit of a rocket ship. But yeah, it's a different perspective, because it's kind of like application first instead of token first, and I think both are growth paths. So
Thank you very much. That was very interesting indeed. So let's ask some questions about smart contract now. So what do you guys think of optimism on Ethereum? Are they pushing towards smart contracts running on layer 2 only? So whoever want to jump in first?
I'm always happy to complain about Ethereum. I'm starting to find it funny. Like, these are the guys, they move smart contracts down to level 1, and now they're complaining that they don't run on level 1. It's like, yeah, they don't work on level 1. Your solution is to move them to level 2. They're trying their best. I think the real interesting question with this is stuff like, smart contracts are an application. To what extent are there a lot of other things that people think are layer 1 that are really layer 2, like money? Because a lot of networks are doing things like, okay, we're going to add closure, we're going to add all of these restrictions and closure to the system to get things like finality on transactions. And it's like, well, maybe that's a layer 2 thing, and maybe money can be on layer 2, and layer 1 money itself is probabilistic. So yeah, I think the Ethereum people are interesting. I don't think they have the answers.
Yeah, I agree with you. Yeah, how about Charlie? What's your take on this one?
Well, I'm biased, right? Because I'm helping one of the competitors, actually, as one of the leading ecosystem in layer 2 solution. So I'm certainly biased to talk about optimistic. Recently, I joined a panel, on the layer 2 panel, together with the Loopring, Saito Network, and also Arbitron. I think at the end of the day, you need to look at the adoption layer. The technology solution approach of layer 2 hasn't really make a decision. The whole Ethereum community, or even the whole Web3, rather level Web3 community, don't really have an answer or conclusion that which direction or approach is the right one. Right? It really depends on the money, depends on the adoption side to really choose. Right? And at the end of the day, right now, I still believe it's going to be a multi-chain, multi-layer blockchain infrastructure world anyway. Right? That's kind of the future. Right? I think we already feel that. Right? Not going to be one single scaling solution of optimism or whatever, like Vladium or all the others can basically dominate the whole thing. So it's not one solution fit for all. That's kind of the vision Polygon seeing. You need to be kind of the scaling, full stack scaling solution. I don't want to comment too much on optimism. I think every single scaling solution on layer 2 have quite some long way to prove they are solid. They need to be better tested, right? And I'll make sure they're secure, and also the demand side, the adoption side, need to choose from their part, right? And we see some other new solution coming up, I just mentioned about ZK. Several ZK scaling solutions are rolling out, about to launch as well. I'm pretty excited about the EVM. We'll see how will that roll out. But yeah, I wouldn't. I'm certainly biased to comment on the optimism side, right?
Okay, sure. Get you. Let's move on to the next question. Do you guys think smart contracts are essential for dApps?
No. we're strongly biased to no. Saito apps, there's no smart contracts. You're just passing SIGs. I mean, maybe one way to think about optimism is smart contracts are and should be a layer 2 application, right? So yeah, I actually, it's interesting. I think that the idea that smart contracts are blockchain apps has been, it's confused a lot of people because it's kind of pulled them away from the full space of possibilities. Like it's really simple. You could do a cryptographic key exchange, like a Diffie-Hellman key exchange, and we can use a blockchain to generate a secret number that no one else knows. And it still surprises people when we point this out to them, that you could use Bitcoin to do a key exchange with no man in the middle attack. And it's like, Bitcoin's been around for what, 13, 14 years now? So yeah, smart contracts, I think they've really closed the way people think about things. I think they're part of what's important, but I don't think they're the whole thing at all. Charlie?
Yeah. First we lose John, right? Now lose Jenny.
Yeah, I'm just letting you know, John's reconnecting, but it might take a sec. He's rebooting at his end.
It's unsupervised, Charlie. You can say anything you want.
Right. Yeah. Well, I think smart contract is important at this moment for time being, but not the perpetual future. I wouldn't say that's the empirical truth of the end game for dApps, right? I really feel that's it's a one very important piece of the puzzle, but also our old technology, right? The EVM has been in the space almost 6 years. Barely any infrastructure trying to innovate that. There are some projects, like including EOS, trying to have a shot, but didn't really work out, right? So we see some WASM, WebAssembly type of a solution coming up, but we'll see. We time will tell, right? If that
I think it leads to bad design. I think people have decided smart contracts are apps, and then they build things, and it's like string management in the EVM is a disaster. These things are so limited, but people try to develop smart contracts that will like store the data and do all of this. I think for managing tokens and pay-ins and payouts, it's beautiful. But for a lot of the apps, I think people are trying to use smart contracts because like this is how it's done. And I think it's one of the Web3 adoption problems, because like these systems are just, the applications are badly designed. And they're forced into using smart contracts plus MetaMask for it because there's no alternative. Because they need MetaMask and Infura for the infrastructure, because Infura will pay for that. And they need smart contracts because that's how you deploy an application. Yeah, strongly opinionated. But they're fun,
Cool. Thank you very much, guys. So let's move on to the last question for this panel. What are you guys doing to ensure openness and node or validator or miner diversity in your network? Who want to go first?
David, that's your question, I guess.
Oh my gosh. Okay. The question's, what are we doing to ensure openness?
Yeah.
I mean, I think we're designing for it. It's a really rough question because I kind of think that we care so strongly about openness. It's like a weird question, it's like asking the Yankees, well, do you think baseball's important?
Right.
No. So maybe I'll turn it around though. And this is what I think people get wrong with openness. I think developers, especially in proof of stake, they have a tendency to run into technical problems, and they're hard problems because they hit the economic layer, right? Like This is the Ethereum people saying we need to pay for like client support. Oh, we need to regulate fee management. The scalability trilemma. And what they do is they hit this hard problem. And because they can't solve it, instead of thinking, why can't I solve it? Because if they thought, why can't I solve it, they might make headway. And I think the scalability trilemma is a great example, because what it teaches you is you've got this trade-off between scale and decentralization. So if the money that you're spending on security is spent on anything other than running machines, you're in the scalability trilemma. But if your security can piggyback off one of those two, then you're not in the scalability trilemma. But they don't think about it this way. What they do is they think, well, we've got a problem paying for stuff, and there's this problem we run into, so we must be dealing with the universal law. And what happens with this, I think, is we've seen it in a bunch of places where they come up with explanations of why things are impossible that are hypotheses. The reason they do it is because they want to make trade-offs. And there's this technical culture where the role of the developer is to be the guy that knows the complex technical systems and knows the complex trade-offs. And I think if you have this kind of development culture, you are going to sacrifice openness, because it's not the way to do it. I'll stop there. I think there are fundamental economic reasons why that relate to, like, the developer starts dividing up money. And as soon as the developer is dividing up money, they're focused on the wrong problem. The right problem is how to get people to pay you as much money as possible. And so you have to design the way you spend money so that the most money flows in. That's the right kind of solution. But I think it's a technical mindset that leads to a lack of an understanding of the real problem, that leads them to focus on, I'm the developer, I'm the expert, and I'm the one that should be deciding how the network is spending money. And anything they do to solve that problem adds closure and kills openness. And the only question is how bad it is. And I think with, like, the more technical they get, the more closure they add, it just gets worse over time. So long answer. I'm curious what you guys think, actually.
Yeah, I think if I want to really comment on the openness, I see the struggle with existing Polkadot network. I feel like the fact they wanted to actually engage people by strong dot holder, right, to put into the parity slot auction. In a way, it's economically incentivize people to lock reserve, right, of their tokens and to minimize the token circulation, but actually it's a very tough system design that lowered a very kind of higher up the barrier for a lot of blockchain developers to really get into the network. It's somehow economically become very not wise and actually almost impossible to get into the network system, right? Because of the number of Kusama or dot you need to get into the validator and parity slot, right? So I think for open, fair type of infrastructure design, to be open for the validators, one requires a pretty good economic incentive and also a low barrier to entry, but also a good governance system. So that's kind of tough for a lot of layer ones to actually mitigate the frictions. I do see some challenges happening in some other layer ones actually right now. So yeah, there's a lot to talk about on the fair validated program. I see many layer ones, including like layer twos, have sets of the validators in the program. So the new ones who want to enter the validator program have two problems. One is they kind of it's kind of first come first serve basis, right? So the ones who come a bit later who actually try to combine and to contribute more value, it's difficult to compete and justify. They actually are more justified to come in, to kind of kick out the existing one. All the network have to expand the validator sets, right? Which is kind of changing a bit on the network dynamics, right? So it's something tricky for the protocol to decide, right? So several protocols using on-chain governance to vote and basically to let the community decide, right? But also that leads to some vulnerability as well.
Yeah. One thing I just want to chip in response to what you're saying is I think governance as an idea is literally the opposite of openness, and it's market versus state. And it's like what people have done is they've created these closed governance systems and they're wrapping it with layers of openness, like, oh, you can vote to get in. And Vitalik recently released this blog post where he basically says coin voting governance doesn't work, which as far as I can tell is the same as Vitalik saying staking doesn't work, because your incentive structure is a form of governance in his mind, right? But I think people get confused about that, and it's like, because they've got this tech mentality, well, we've got problems we can't solve, governance is the solution. And it's like, no, openness is the solution. Like, governance is a bad solution. Governance is the kind of technical optimization you do if you can't solve the problem. And maybe that's okay. And I think the interesting things with smart contracts and like parachains and proof of stake is they contribute value. And the question is, like, where is it best to have those kind of structures?
Cool. So that's all the questions I've got. Thank you so much, guys, for listening. To wrap this up, can you guys quickly let the audience know where to reach you? So whether it's Twitter or Telegram, just feel free to jump in.
Charlie, you want to? I think I'm easy. David at Saito.tech. You can find me in Saito Telegram too.
Yeah, reach me on LinkedIn. I'm active on LinkedIn. That's the best way to connect me.
Okay, so thank you so much for joining us, and I hope you guys have a better understanding of what Web3 is and how's the next version of the internet. And once again, thank you for being here with us, and thank you for having me, and I hope you have a great day.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you, Jemmy, for winding us up. Thanks, Charlie and David, for finishing this last session. Just a couple of last points of order. If you'd like to keep having any parts of this conversation, we love having people in our Telegram group. Hey, John, we're just winding up. We really pride ourselves on our Telegram group being a great place for really in-depth and up-to-the-minute blockchain discussion. That's at Saito.io. You can find all of our socials on the website is the easiest place, Saito.io. And for anyone who missed something, wants to recap, take notes, anything like that, there is a recording of this going up both on our YouTube channel, which you can get to quickly just by going to Saito.io/YouTube, and also here on the Crowdcast app. So you can follow the original links and you will quickly find recording of this and also all of our Saito town halls and other content. So just wrapping up, I'd like to thank everyone who participated tonight. Some really great discussions, really interesting points made. I'd like to thank everyone who attended, and I'd like to think we might do something like this again in the future. So signing off now from Saitoplex. We'll see you next time.